All right, thank you everyone for your patience. It is 7:17. We will go ahead and call the education meeting to order. Attendance will be noted. And I will turn it over to Dr. Nicholson.
All right, thank you, Ms. White. Just noting the committee meeting dates. This is the last scheduled meeting for this school year for the Education Committee of the Whole. Next meeting will be in September. As far as the agenda goes for this evening, we do have a pretty robust agenda, 6 agenda items. I'm going to pull up the slideshow here and get us started. So as we're running a little late, we don't want to wait too long here. We're going to start off, as this loads, I hope, with an update from PV Arts. Mrs. Needon is going to provide that. We'll be then transitioning to some science and curriculum planning updates from Dr. Handerhan, an educational equity action plan update from Dr. Moulton, and then finally middle school gifted services and youth aid panel updates from yours truly. So with that said, the author of the Arts Beat newsletter, that the latest edition came out today, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Needon to give us an update on PV Arts.
Thank you. I should know how to work microphones if I'm supporting the arts. So I'm Layla, and really I'm just here to just give you a rundown on what I've worked on and what I've done in the last few months. So if we, okay, so I really just made a list of what I have been working on every day. From the beginning, when I first moved into the role, I visited every single arts classroom, every music classroom, every art classroom, and my number one goal was to try to get to know the teachers. I had been focused on literacy since working in Perkiomen Valley, so this was a shift. I spent time with all the arts teachers. I interviewed each and every one, talked to them about their challenges, strengths, what ideas they had, where they saw the arts in the future in PV, and again, where our strengths are. I also have been working closely with, so far, our band boosters, because indoor percussion had just begun when I started, as well as with our arts boosters, and connected with them. I'm in the middle of an art study, and I will go into that on one of the following slide decks. I've also been researching a lot of on-ramps for secondary music. We have a lot of off-ramps, for example, when students go from elementary to middle school. There's a lot of competition. There are a lot of sports. So looking into different on-ramps and different things that we can do, ideas that we can offer, and exploring those. As you know, I instituted the bi-weekly newsletter, and it goes out to 6,300, a little over 6,300 families, and that has been a labor of love. I've been getting a lot of feedback from that. I'd like to share with you why I created the Arts Beat. There were a number of reasons. Number one, for families who'd like to celebrate their students in band and at the art show. So sending photos or the picture or the article to grandma, as well as if someone couldn't attend an event. We all know that it is very comprehensive and there is so much in there, but one thing I have found is that it is nonfiction text, and not everyone reads absolutely everything all the time. There are some families that do, but families, I've gotten a lot of feedback in terms of being able to go and scroll through. A lot of families have told me that they can't believe how much we have at PV, how many arts opportunities we have. It's bombarding them with the arts. I'm hoping that one day real estate agents say, I really want to move to PV because I hear they have a great, or you should buy a house here. They have a great arts program. So filling our community with what we're doing, giving recognition to our families, as well as I'd like to see in a few years if we do notice that retention of the arts has grown because families are getting or students and families are getting the recognition that art is important, and that they can do both arts and sports. So that's the Art Beat. And the next one is I've attended and photographed almost nearly all of the evening musicals, concerts, art shows. I've gone to them all, provided support for teachers, maybe staying with their students while they're in one orchestra room, while they're not in this room, or the instruments, or helping out with those. I've also identified and drafted a few grant proposals, one through IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. I believe, and don't quote me, one was for $250,000. Another one was for a little bit less. We had to put those on hold because of some of the parameters, and I'm looking into it a little bit more. One of the parameters was making sure that we had leadership in place for 2 years, and with Dr. Russell leaving, we thought that maybe we should hold off on that. But there are a number of ideas and grants that I'm looking into, and again, I did write preliminary proposals for them. Surveying our music staff for Summer Academy. One of the biggest things that I've been hearing is that we have so much work for literacy. We have so many opportunities in professional development for our math teachers, our science teachers. However, one of the challenges was finding specialized professional development for our art and music teachers. So that is something that I spent a lot of time working on. I was told that and what I did is I planned Summer Academy for our arts and music teachers for the first time, and I was told this was the most robust offering that they've ever had. So what else? Going down my list. So I'm also in the process of facilitating curriculum writing. I'm putting together what we're doing for that, and I'll be facilitating all of the curriculum writing for arts and music going forward, and that is something that I did do with English Language Arts this past year for grades 6, 7, and 8. So, and I've been working with curriculum for a long time. So we are moving forward with that. Our sessions are coming up. I'll point that out. We are working, or I will be working with the teachers on middle stages for those additional days that we're adding to the middle school schedule. My understanding is in middle school, they're going to have moved from a certain number of days because of the change in middle school schedule. So I'm going to be working with teachers, again, to go ahead and do that and to create that curriculum, as well as K-5 elementary music. We're going to be working on stage 2. The other thing that I've spent a lot of time on is being an on-call person for indoor percussion and color guard. I know that scheduling our gyms and scheduling our different locations have been a challenge, so I've been their on-call person. If they're running into a scheduling conflict, I'll get a call at 7 at night, and I'll make some calls, and I'll be there, and I've been their advocate. And I believe it's worked out pretty well. I've also been working to support the high school, as well as Mr. Feldy, who's been fantastic, and indoor percussion and drumline team to make sure that they have their gym space for practices. And again, working really great with Mr. Felty on that. And again, being part of the team, I know that here at the high school, we've initiated a team where we get together every few weeks and we talk about upcoming home show festivals. That's something that I've been a part of. Worked with Mr. Moran, nursing protocol, and I've been the one that's been gaining nursing, or attempting to get nursing, or EMS staffing. That has been a challenge. We've been working on staffing plans. I've been working to remove barriers. One of the big barriers, my understanding we had, is getting the students from Middle School West to track practice, and then making sure that they don't miss their final period of the day. But with the help of Mr. Creedon and Dr. Nicholson, thank you. I was a pest, but we made it happen. So I thank you for that. So that was a solution for the busing. I'm looking at the budgets right now to make sure that we have equity among schools with that. Auditorium, I'm looking to create a streamlined auditorium system to support scheduling of all of our musicals and everything that happens in our auditoriums. That has been an area that I've learned that has been a challenge, so I've been working on that. Working on the curriculum team. So this is really a laundry list, so if you can go to the next slide.
Well, wait, can we?
Oh, go, absolutely.
So this is amazing, because we've been waiting for an update about everything that's been going on. It's been a long time coming to have an advocate in the same way that athletics has a director of athletics. So that is the reason this position really was created,
Yes.
right? So I appreciate you giving the laundry. The laundry list is helpful.
Yes.
It sounds like you're just reading your things through, but these are things that have been pain points for a very long time. So I do have a couple of questions
Sure.
with regards to, I need to digest the list a little bit, but a couple of the ones that stood out to me rather. For example, developing an instrument repair list with estimates and process,
Yes.
that one there. So that's something that is the responsibility of the directors at this time. They have relationships with, like Zeswitz, for example, they come once a week. You obviously know the process because you've uncovered the process that they have. So are you saying that as this item appears on your list, you're taking that off their plate? Or are you facilitating it in a different way? Or is it an audit to see what they need replaced? Where is that?
Absolutely. I would love to share that with you. So in my initial discussions and in my ongoing discussions with teachers, with the music teachers, one of the things I've learned is that budgets are inconsistent. Some principals will say, tell me what you need. And the other principals will say, this is your budget. So what's happening is those principals that say, tell me what you need, sometimes those teachers feel uncomfortable saying, well, I have 5 instruments that need to be repaired, or I've been working with this that has broken keys for years. And they have and not every teacher, but a number of teachers have said, I have a lot of instruments. And then others are saying, my budget doesn't cover. If I were to ask for this, and this to be repaired, that exceeds the budget that I have. So there may be submitting one item for repair. So what I've done is I met with Dr. Russell and I met with Amy Hurd, and Dr. Russell encouraged me to find out what exactly do we need. So I put out a list. I created a spreadsheet, tabs for each of the schools, and I had everyone wrote down what their needs are, their specific needs in terms of what's broken. And then I've sent that off to Zeswitz, and I'm waiting for them to
Come back
provide
with
me
an
with that
estimate and a timeline.
Because if I turn that in without the estimate, the next question is going to be, well, how much is this going to cost?
Sure.
So-
Okay,
and
so
there-
it was an audit process that you took part of. So at this point, is there still information pending from 7 buildings, or do you have a complete audit for all items that are looking or needing at least a timeline for refresh or replacement?
So I have urgent needs, is what my understanding. There have been some concerns. Number one is they feel that don't have enough time to do that it is a comprehensive process. Now, I did ask the teachers to provide me that it's been a month, maybe 2 months even, a month and a half. But again, it's a lot of time, and some are running between buildings. So I did ask them for what they could give me. So there could be others, I will warn you. The other thing too is my understanding is that as a district, and some of the teachers have been here for a significant amount of time, they feel as if, or not feel as if, to date, they don't believe that there is a process for refreshing instruments. For example, we've had some instruments for 25 years, and and there isn't a line item. And I have not talked to Jim Weaver, so I want to apologize. I don't want to say anything that is inaccurate. But from their understanding, there isn't a line item for replacement. And then additionally, the amount of budgets they get are also not enough to send their instruments out to get repaired each year. For example, we have a car, you have to get the oil change, you get the tires checked. Our instruments have gone 10, 20, 15, 20, who knows how long, years without those cleanings, without those refurbishments. So therefore, these instruments are, many of them, in dire need of repair, and then also with them not knowing, is there a replacement plan?
Okay.
So there's a number of elements with that.
Yep. And so I appreciate you taking the initiative to do the audit. I think it was well past due. With regards to the money stuff, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, because this is the first I'm hearing about it, but
Of
it's so
course.
comprehensive, and I'm
And-
excited about it,
Yeah,
you know,
and this
because
would
it's
be the-
been a long time coming. It's okay. And so what I think the next step would be is really to get a cumulative list. You don't have to give them a drop dead date. I know that this is the time of year that all of the instruments that the district owns come back. I know that a lot of times the high school kids will go down to the lower levels, and they'll actually help inventory them and put them back into the cycle. That's obviously a perfect time to touch them and take a look at what they might need. Obviously, everything can't be replaced all at once, but just like we have done as a board with the fleet vehicles and the uniforms for all of the sports teams, we can certainly work on, and I will work with Mr. Weaver directly, to work on a cycle for repair, replacement, and prioritize associated with those items per building. So as you mentioned, the other thing that I have been concerned about over time is that there is not necessarily intentional inequity, but just process inequities between the buildings and what they are feeling comfortable enough to ask for. And I think that what has been missing is oversight and an advocate, which it sounds like you have been, so I appreciate that. So if you could have the lists broken down by building, that would be very, very helpful. In addition to the instruments that are used, that would really be the middle level and the high school instruments. And you're not exaggerating when you say that some of the instruments are literally in use from like 2001, 2002, 2003. That's actually literal, and I only know that because the tuba my brother played, which was brand new when he was here at PV, is still being used in marching band today. That is something that should be addressed. Just because it's old doesn't mean it doesn't work, but it does absolutely need to be maintained. I would also really love to see a list of asks from the elementary level if we're looking to expand curriculum at that level 2 curriculum study. I know that we've invested in a couple of different resources for elementary school music, and I would love to see if they need supplemental materials to help enrich the programming there. Does anybody have anything else? I have a lot of big thoughts about this, so Mrs. Lofton?
I'll just add, I'm delighted to see all of this happening. As you said, it's been a long time
It's a board
coming,
career
and
coming, come to fruition.
very,
Yeah, I
you know,
agree with that.
Based on my experiences with the music department, absolutely fabulous teachers. So delighted that they're getting this structural support. So.
I actually even went down everything that was purchased in 23, 24, and to find out, what are we spending? And what I did find is I've actually literally added up every single item that was purchased for music and for art, separated those out using Amy Heard spreadsheets, and then I totaled them to find out how much each building is actually spending in music and in art by building. And it
would just be, you don't have to
But my point is-
divulge it now, but if Mr. Weaver would be able to provide that by way of his report, I think it would be helpful for the board to have some context as to what's spent per vertical, per building. That would be very helpful if you would hand that information on so we could take a look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now you can progress the slides. I'm very
you have-
excited about the whole thing. Okay, go.
Absolutely. I'm excited about the whole thing. I can't stop, to be quite honest with you. There was a lot to uncover. I'm finding it interesting, and a lot of challenges to work on, and then anytime a challenge has been rectified, the emotion or the feeling from the teacher is just the most amazing reward. And then in the end, it just seeps down to our students, so. So in terms of the art study and where I am in terms of that, is I have gathered 4 years of curricular art and music data, and that actually is a link to it on your slide deck. I also gathered 4 years of co-curricular enrollment data. Again, the teacher interviews and surveys, they were comprehensive. I've compiled all of that. Music teacher interviews and surveys, compiled all of that. Counselors, I met with a significant amount of counselors who have provided me with incredible information. If I could share one piece of information now that I'd love to share with you. I met with a teacher today, and I found out that 20 students from Middle School West, this is what I was told today, will be attending Montgo, which is fabulous. However, but they're band students. And the challenge with that is one thing a guidance counselor alerted me to, and this is why I'm meeting with people, because I really had to get my arms wrapped around everything. One of the things I learned is that we take our students, and I actually have been on a tour of Monco, and it's a fabulous presentation. Monco, if you have not been there to walk around and take a tour, I suggest you go. It is fabulous. I wanted to go to Monco after I attended this tour. However, we do not take tours of students of the high school. So, and now I'm going to chime into what an art teacher told me. An art teacher told me we have a fabulous graphic design course. However, they may see the graphic design course at Monco, and they're not able to compare apples to apples because we do not take our middle schoolers on a tour of our high school to see the dynamic programs that we have here as well. So I believe that again, from my counselor survey and my music teacher surveys and getting together with them is something that I'm learning that I think it's very important that we do, because we are losing 20 band students to Monco. And then even more with that, right now, we do not have a system that supports students that go to Monco to participate in music, because that is their electives. So again, there are so many challenges to figure out. And again, I'm just now even getting my arms around this, but it is a lot. So I just wanted to explain how complex it is. So going forward, I am currently actually working on an elementary student survey. I would like to try to get that survey to students. I know they, in the last month and a half, it's been all PSSAs. But my goal is, I've already written the survey, and my goal is to survey our 4th and 5th graders in elementary. I want to find out why they're interested in music, why they remain in music, why they may have left music, why they don't choose music. So those types of questions. So I'm currently working on a survey. I can't promise, but I'm aiming to give that survey. I have a consent form for parents, and I'm aiming for the last 2 weeks in June. But again, I just have to see where we land with that. I'm next in the fall, we're going to go ahead and conduct a middle school survey, including focus groups, high school student survey, and art and music focus groups. Parent survey is my goal. I also am just started, not just, but I've been in the process with all of this of survey of neighboring districts right now. I believe that is a link. It is I've compared every handbook in the high schools, and every high school in Montgomery County, put down all of the courses that they have as compared to where we have on a chart. So you can actually see, and they're in order in terms of level 1 courses in high school all the way down to honors and AP. And you can see where we compare and where we align. For example, we do not offer honors music courses or high school art courses. However, almost every other school district offers honors music courses, which could be a reason we may lose some students. For example, I had a son that was very passionate about getting the highest GPA he could possibly get. And I could have seen my son possibly drop out because he wanted those weighted electives. So I think that there are lots of opportunities, and I think those other courses and what the other school districts are doing could really inform us. And again, I want to meet with our students, though, to see, because we're unique ourselves, and see where we are and see what their interests are, and if that would be something. Again, I'm looking into other schools' systems. How do they handle kids that go to Voc Technical School? How do they retain students? And then I'm also in the process of a summer research study with music teachers to research what the actual research says about recruitment and retention. And then finally, looking into educational pathways and career pathways. So So again, I'm in the middle of that, but it is comprehensive.
So I've taken some notes, and I will make sure that in addition to the budget items and the barriers that you mentioned, I don't want to gloss over that because I've had anecdotal conversations about the barriers that exist with the transition from middle to high school. I've mentioned it both to Dr. Nicholson and Dr. Russell, and I've asked for some additional information to coordinate the removal of those barriers for the counselors that schedule that ninth grade year, and then to allow for Dr. Fuller, who I know is very open and willing to
Yes.
remove barriers for students
Yes.
and allow them access. Again, until you understand that something is a problem, you can't fix the problem.
Exactly.
So we'll continue to have conversations on that. And then with regards to curricular offerings, we'll obviously have more conversation of that. But as a
Absolutely.
very broad stroke, it's been very helpful to hear you verbalize all of that.
And
It is very big work.
It is
Yep.
bigger than I ever imagined. And I'm in the middle of creating a document with all of the research from that entire study. So at the end, you'll have everything laid out.
Perfect.
Some exciting opportunities. I wanted to, again, bring light to who we are in terms of the arts. We are collaborating with the Skip Back French Market. We are having a Perk Valley Artist Alley. We have 120 pieces of artwork from every single one of our schools, elementary through high school. They will be displayed. We are I'm working with the boosters now. They've gotten involved to support me with this project. And we have they're going to be there. We're also going to have students demonstrating art, so we'll have students painting. They've signed up for time slots. We also have 2 orchestra groups, one from Middle School East and one from Middle School West. They will be performing at the community market right there in Skip Back, which I think is really brings attention to how dynamic we are in terms of the arts. And then our students will be wearing berets, our instruments playing. And then the next slide, the last slide is we tried, Sharon Franciosa was very big. She was in. We picked a date. We were working with teachers, but we just couldn't get all of our teachers. And we also couldn't schedule a night when we didn't have arts conflicts, especially with everything that's already organized. But for 26, 27, we're going to go gung-ho. We're going to have a signing night. It will be a celebration of students who are going to be to either maybe going from high school into a career into the arts, maybe working in printing or anywhere in the arts, as well as for those who are going to college or any kind of school or trade school or film school, any type of school to honor students who are taking arts to the next level. So we would like to have an art signing with a reception, and then they're going to sign a symbolic letter of intent. So we had so many dates on the calendar. I can't tell you, but Kelly George has put date after date on the calendar, but we just couldn't make it happen this year. But I want you to know that I'm passionate about doing this, and the teachers have all expressed great interest in this to support and to honor their students. And that's it for me. It was a lot. I apologize, but
It's a year culmination, so we really appreciate the effort, and then also the full debrief is needed. We are going to definitely have this as a springboard going into next year, and then it seems like there's some work that's going to happen over this summer as well. So if you don't mind producing all of that you've gathered, that way it can be disseminated through the proper channels, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you very, very much for coming out tonight.
absolutely.
Mrs. Neen, thank you very much. As a high school student who was in both football and the marching band, I appreciate your advocacy for the arts. So thank you for all the work that you've done this year. Look
Thank
forward
you.
to continuing that. With that, if there are no further questions or comments around the table, we'll transition to Dr. Handerhan to talk a little bit about some science resources.
All right. So, you may remember was up here earlier talking about the STEEL standards and how we've been doing some curriculum writing for science K through 8. So that has wrapped up, and since January, our middle school teachers have been participating in a comparative pilot. And actually, if we look back even further, this pilot actually began last school year. So for those of you on the board who were there then, you may have remember hearing about Twig, which was presented to you with issues regarding the problems we had with our firewall in that, where our teachers looked at a variety of different resources to support the curriculum. They chose at that point to pilot Twig, but then the pilot fell apart due to like some technical issues that we've had with it. And so they really kind of took that off the board as something we could actually, pursue. So this year, we looked at additional resources that the team brought to the table. We compared style with a resource called Kessler Science, and we had consensus from our teachers in choosing style science. So some of the things that they highlighted with that is style is the preferred choice, they said, with many teachers highlighting its strong alignment to the STEEL standards, its flexibility, it's modern, it has an interactive design. Teachers really appreciated that it provides a customizable foundation with built-in supports for instruction, assessment, and also for differentiation as well. We're looking for the support to purchase this resource for 3 years, the digital platform, and also access to all the PDFs for the cost of $110,000 roughly. On our next slide, we have some feedback from teachers. Teachers overwhelmingly did enjoy it, I would say. Kids too, actually. The teachers actually were surveying their students along the way as well. And so we had great feedback across the board. That last one there I really appreciate too, pushing higher level thinking and application of science. Really that's all what the STEEL standards is all about now. It's not so much just like learning the facts and the content, it's really about the doing of science and technology and engineering.
So those were workbooks on the previous slide?
Yeah, it shows workbooks there, however, they are not included.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, I was going to ask if there are consumables with this
Yeah.
particular
So
program.
for the pilot, they did provide us with consumables, but the teacher feedback from them was
Wasn't
that,
worth it.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
The students enjoyed more of the hands-on experiences.
And sometimes the consumables are, I mean, they're nice to have, it seems, but you could also just get the things and have it be not given to you by them.
That's the feedback we
Yeah,
received from our
okay.
teachers. Yep.
right.
Just for clarification, Dr. Hanrahan, the PDF access would give us access to all those consumables,
Correct.
but not printed for us. We would print as needed.
Correct.
Right.
Yep, yeah.
It's
And again,
less waste, more efficient. That's
Yeah.
what I would be understanding too. Okay.
yep, yeah, one more constant theme from feedback from the teachers was a constant from all the responses, teachers should remain central with any platform serving as a support and not the driver of instruction. So teachers didn't want to feel like completely binded by, science is all about like the phenomena, and we have again like all these awesome resources like surrounding us, and so they were really looking at like, okay, we want a resource that's like provides all the bells and whistles and all those things, but like when we have like these real life experiences occurring all around us, we wanted to provide our students with that real life aspects instead of like perhaps like what would be in like a workbook, for instance.
So is this platform, that money, are you looking to have it approved in June?
Correct.
Wonderful. Does anyone on the committee have any issue with that? Okay, so then we'll be able to move that forward for June.
Thank you. All right, and then we also have some curriculum planning updates as well. And so, on our mind certainly has been with the programming at the middle school level and how to support the specials going forward. And so just want to provide you a brief update on that, on the progress that we're having right now. So we have secured dates with our teachers in all of these subject areas to begin that work. Some of that work has already actually started. FCS, for example, we met earlier in April, and computer science, our teachers actually met today to work on some curriculum. We've also secured some dates during the summer as well. Where you see that there's only like one date on there, we fully anticipate, we're working with teachers to provide dates to work in the summer. They're aware of that, but they're just working with their calendars and making sure that we have alignment. So we'll have an update. We can provide you with an update of that if you would like one once we secure those dates. But everything so far is going to schedule in terms of, we're all coming together completing this work.
Any questions around the table? Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Hanrahan.
All right, and then finally, here is the STEM curricular revisions that we've been working on all school year. We have K through 5 science and 6 through 8 science, as mentioned. Also, the STEEL standards affect our explorations courses as well. So our K to 5 exploration teachers have aligned their curriculum to the STEEL standards too, for those technology and engineering strand of that. And so we've been working on that this school year. Our high school teachers were together working on geometry and algebra 2. We have that new personal finance course, actually 2 courses. Again, one's going to be a half credit course that will soon be a graduation requirement. And then we also have the other option of that financial literacy of mathematics, which would be a full year course and a mathematics credit too. So all those are linked there for you to preview, but we would look for approval of those documents as well, those stage 1 documents.
So I have a question about that. We were talking earlier in the Wellness Committee about PV Woods and the creation of the sensory gardens and a lot of the new resources that have been built into our outdoor spaces and ideas for how that can support achievement of the STEEL standards through hands-on learning. And so I'm just curious, how have you looked at our available outside resources and worked to incorporate those into the new curriculum?
Yeah, that's actually been a topic of a conversation between Dr. Clune and myself. We've been touring the schools and really looking at them to see how we could get those experiences for all students, and actually like articulating those experiences in the curriculum as well when we get to stage 3 of our curriculum writing, which outlines like the how we are going to teach all this content. So we're definitely looking into that, and we don't have it all outlined right now, but we have teachers on board with it. The goal would be to develop the curriculum and then begin the process of like kind of disseminating it. So just as for instance, like all the middle school teachers took part in this. The elementary teachers did not, because we have a lot of elementary teachers, and so we had representatives from each grade level participate. And so those teachers are coming together to brainstorm all those ideas, which will then get out to the rest of the staff.
And then my other question with this, and this probably also gets over into the humanities side of the curriculum, but part of the whole PV Woods initiative has been our district's relationship with the Delaware Tribe of Indians, which were, the Lenape people who historically lived in this area, and having goals of incorporating their knowledge and understanding and values into our curriculum. And we signed a statement of mutual intention with their tribe saying that we would do that. And so I'm just curious how that has informed the work that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. So just as a for instance with that, as an example, when we had the purple, what's the name of the bird? The purple martin, thank you. Yep, those bird houses that were built and erected at Evergreen, and we had members of the Lenape community out here to oversee that. We also had science classes out there as well, engaging in that. And so, again, they're already part of those conversations, and we are looking to include those. Actually, the same day, Ms. Zappala, who is here right now, was outside and with her classroom too.
Okay.
So we have teachers that are already like kind of doing that, but again, bringing them together so it's more consistent at all schools has been a goal.
Yeah, I'd love to see that formalized somewhere, in our curriculum, wherever migratory patterns are taught or something like that. And, here now we have actually something we can go observe, and
Absolutely.
something
Yep.
of that nature. Exactly.
So we can work on
Love
putting
it.
that together and presenting it to you.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So right before you leave, I was thinking about it a little bit earlier in our retreat session, and I was just thinking about it again when we were talking about the new STEEL standards and all of the resources that you are looking to implement for next year. Generally, the board does 2 sets of building walks, one in, a set in the fall and a set in the spring. If I could plant the seed, that we would maybe focus on taking a look at some of these initiatives in action at each level for the fall walks. I think that would be really a great use of time. I know Dr. Weston would definitely enjoy seeing the steel standards in action at each level. So if we could just plant the seed for a focus for building walks, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
For
I
the
think that'd be
fall, and
great.
then we'll talk about the spring when the spring comes.
We'll plant the seed for the garden.
Perfect, and we can see we can see the bird hotels. I don't know if they move out. Do they move out in the fall? I don't. They do? Oh, see that. Oh, great. Oh, people know about them. Excellent.
We can do one in
Have a whole
April or
team.
May, though. They're there right now, so.
Fabulous. Okay, very, very good. Perfect. Well, now it's dinner and bedtime. Okay, I appreciate that. But I think that would be helpful because what I was thinking about a little bit earlier was how long we really should wait before we really have a look back as to how these new implementation of standards have impacted everything that we do day to day. So I think fall will be a perfect time to.
Yeah, that'd be exciting. Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it, Dr.
Thank you.
Hanahan.
All right, if there are no other questions or comments, I will turn over to Dr. Moulton for an update on our educational equity plan.
Good evening. I want to start this conversation just by grounding everybody back into Policy 832, which is our educational equity policy. This is where this work all comes from. Basically, this policy just affirms that practices and resources are fairly allocated to all students based on need. And what I italicized in the verbiage on the left is just a phrase that says it requires ongoing collaboration, examination of all aspects of district programs and operations to ensure that fairness and access are embedded throughout our practice. So with that said, I really wanted to talk about the fact that, equity-focused practices are occurring throughout our programs and disciplines. It's part of our culture that we're fostering and isn't necessarily just a siloed practice. So I want to highlight tonight some various equity-focused practices and continuous improvement that we've been engaging in across the district. It's not an exhaustive list. These are just some highlights. We don't have all the time in the world tonight. But I just want to kind of highlight some of these different areas. So the first thing I wanted to highlight was we updated our 339 plan this year, which is our college and career readiness standards. We talked about this earlier at this committee a couple months ago. Basically, these are the standards that are part of our comprehensive guidance plan. But these standards examine whether or not all students have equal access to career readiness, exploration, and post-secondary planning based on their needs and interests. And it ensures that across the curriculum, K-12, all students are getting access to this education. And this was approved. It was submitted and approved by the state in March of 2026. So we are good for another 3 more years with that. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was equity in sports. So we have improved our equity in sports. The high school, I just want to note, I think this is mentioned before, but they received the National Unified Champion School Banner recipient for Unified Bocce and Unified Track. And in order to receive this, they had demonstrated excellence in 10 different standards of inclusion. And just to note, they were one of 32 schools in the history of Pennsylvania to get the award. So it was a pretty big honor, and they're very proud of that, and they should be. And also, in terms of adding diversity to sports, we've added girls wrestling, and we've also added girls flag football, so there's more options for girls for playing sports. And our Best Buddies program, which focuses completely on inclusion, inclusionary practices, and mentorship. Our program here at PV High School earned the Chapter of the Year. So again, just excellent work that they're doing. I want to highlight, we talked about resources and resource review that's going on. Dr. Hanahan talked about that. But I just want to talk about the rubric that's used when resources are being reviewed. There's an equity component in that rubric that's being used. And so all of the materials that are being assessed for use within our district goes through and is looked at through that lens, that cultural lens, looking to see if there's assessing the cultural and racial relevance. So it's really aligning curriculum decisions with inclusionary practices, helps to identify any potential bias, or if there's any groups that are being excluded from different lessons, and so there's a whole process for that. So I was really proud to see that. During our recent resource review, this was included. In terms of health and wellness, in efforts to improve access and supports, we've included a section on our website that just has information about resources and community resources so that it kind of can remove that barrier of access and not knowing how to get resources. We've also improved our abuse prevention efforts. We have added lessons from agencies. We partner with various agencies to add extra lessons to our elementary programming to help support abuse prevention. And there was also a move to form a new digital wellness committee that will start next school year with the goal of addressing technology, student well-being, and responsible use, and how to develop that through a systems level practice. We talked earlier this year about anti-Semitism education for educators. We researched anti-Semitism, resources available, develop partnerships with faith-based leaders, and staff will have the opportunity to engage in anti-Semitism training through our SAS portal, and we're working to arrange for a trainer for our Act 80 Day for next year, a speaker. Viking Zone. I want to take a second to highlight this. We've had a lot of conversations about Viking Zone, but I love the idea of Viking Zone because it really is the framework for removing barriers and creating structures for access. So what Viking Zone is so unique and what it amazingly does is it creates these multiple pathways for connections so students can gain access to things that they need. So they can access teachers if they need, they can access the gym if they need, they can access breakfast if they need, but they're able to get their needs met, and it creates a pathway for them to be able to do that, thus removing various barriers for them. So I love Viking Zone. We've talked a lot about our gifted review program and recommendations. Through that program, we were looking at our referral process and looking to see if there's ways that we can change our referral process to make any changes to help to create a wider net, cast a wider net to collect more students to be able to screen for gifted and move on to our gifted process. We've made modifications to our gifted program, which we've discussed earlier. In terms of family, community, school engagement, we have created family school engagement teams where we worked with community partners, families, and students and staff in creating a Martin Luther King Day of Service, where we planned it and hosted it, and it really was a beautiful event, bringing everybody together, and the whole purpose of that event was inclusion. We're hosting a ELD family night, where we are inviting families of our multilingual learners to a dinner and an entertainment event. We're going to have a scientist do a science show for the students. And really the purpose of that night is to help to bring these families in and help foster that community and belongingness, to hopefully reduce some of the pressure that they have and concern about actually approaching us when they have concerns. It also helps to address any of the unique communication needs that they have. The next one I want to talk about is the Youth Aid Panel, which I think Dr. Nicholson is going to be talking about a little bit more later tonight. But the Youth Aid Panel at the high school has been a phenomenal access. It allows us to engage in restorative practices instead of relying exclusively on exclusionary disciplinary practices. So we're partnering with communities, community agencies, in order to create interventions that are supportive, and these students aren't necessarily suspended from school, thus being excluded from school. So it's really prioritizing support over punishment, which is very important, especially for some groups that may disproportionately be impacted by punitive systems. So it really offers a chance for restoration. And moving on to restorative practices. and responsive classroom, really in creating those inclusive classrooms, which focuses on culturally responsive interactions, and ensures that all students have access to this because all teachers and staff have been trained on this. So it just fosters that supportive environment, helping to remove some barriers to education. The next one that I have is removing barriers. I thought that this was very interesting in talking with Dr. Fuller. He's been working very closely on trying to remove barriers for access to certain high school courses due to different prerequisites that are required. So really looking at what those prerequisites are and are they absolutely necessary, and are there any barriers that they can remove to really improve the access to those courses. And it also talked about a world language class audit, where currently the way the courses are structured, if you're in a core world language class, it's very difficult to move to an honors class from there. And it's because the scope ends up being different within the honors class and the core class. So really looking at trying to align them a little bit closer so there can be more flexible movement between core and honors. So removing that barrier. Differentiation in curriculum writing. So when you're in stage 3 of curriculum writing, there's different focused ways where we're working to differentiate learning activities and options for students that have different learning styles and variability. So looking to really remove some of those barriers. In terms of MTSS, that is your model for equity as far as I'm concerned, because it's a framework that is working to improve consistency in decision making. It ensures consistency across buildings. It reduces inconsistency in terms of inconsistent access to interventions, so everybody has access to the same interventions. And it really reduces reliance on parent advocacy to be able to get support for their students. So these students are able to be caught earlier. And it really just encourages collaborative problem solving between teams. PLCs, they are working to ensure that there is a guaranteed curriculum across each grade level. So all teachers are teaching the same knowledge, skills, and standards. We've added diversity to high school clubs. So there's a Black student union, a Jewish student union, a Muslim student union, Christian student union, and a Latino student union. And then lastly, using data to identify inequities and drive decisions. So there was data that was found that showed disproportionality between female students entering STEM pathways. And so what was done was there was efforts to examine those STEM pathways and really identify barriers to help to figure out what needed to be put in place to help support those populations and improve female access to those classes. There was continued work to ensure equitable access to high quality materials across buildings. So in looking, we were realizing that not all buildings had access to the same materials. So doing material audits to find out what buildings had and what buildings need, and then ensuring that those materials are being used and being used with fidelity across buildings. And then lastly, the high school is currently working to use AP test data reports, which uses PSAT data to identify students that could be considered candidates for AP courses. So this allows the identification of students that might not otherwise have been recommended for those AP classes. But there is an additional barrier that it is buried in there, in that there's a cost associated with taking the PSAT. And so, we learned that the board just recently agreed to pay for the PSAT for 10th grade students. So now all students will have access to those scores, which means that using that AP test data report is now possible. And so it just really eliminated a lot of access barriers to students, and now more students might be recommended for some AP courses. So again, these are just some areas that I wanted to highlight that is being done to support equity. There's so many across our district, But it's really embedded in all of the work that we do, and in, you know, the conversations that we're having across disciplines. We're often talking about, like, is this equitable access? Is there anything that we could be doing differently? So really working on doing these things with intention is our focus, and we're trying to continue to embed this within our culture.
Yes, I have a question. What is the criteria for any type of diversity club?
Dr. Fuller would have a better explanation of that. I'm not sure what the criteria is.
Go ahead, Dr. Nicholson. I just was going to say, I think maybe Dr. Russell or Dr. Nicholson could speak to that. I know that there, with regard to having the club advisor as part of the schedule, there's parameters around that, but I think that it's basically a form that gets filled out and presented to administration at the high school, and then they're allowed to have a club. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it.
Yeah, I can weigh in from my experience, maybe a bit different at Perkiomen Valley, but in my experience, yeah, that's exactly correct. With a club, you need to show that there's enough students to be part of that club, and you need to have an advisor that's willing to meet, typically unpaid to begin with, and in some of these, it would remain unpaid potentially, just depending on the religious affiliation. It would be a volunteer opportunity, but you would need to show that there's enough students to carry that club and an advisor to be an adult supervisor during their meetings.
Quick question on the the last point about PSA test results and AP recommendations. What is the correlation?
I'm not sure what the correlation is, but there's a AP test data report that's able to extract, I guess, data taken from the PSATs to then use predictive analysis as to how well these students would do in an AP class based on how well they scored on the PSAT. But in terms of the direct analysis, I couldn't speak to that.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Dr. Moulton. The PSAT is able to take scores that are similar to the score that, let's say, I would achieve and extrapolate that to give a percentage that I might be able to be proficient on the AP Stat exam or the AP Bio exam based on what I've been able to do with PSATs.
At a specific curriculum level?
Correct, yes.
So it's not just a general
It's not just
testing
not just a general. You could handle an AP, but it breaks it down by different AP courses.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, any other questions around the table? All right, I just want to take a moment, Dr. Moulton, to thank you. As this is our last education committee of the whole, I want to say over the last 4 months that I've been here, it's been a great pleasure working with you. As Dr. Champagne-Lee transitions in at the end of this year and going in next year, it's truly been a pleasure working with you, and thank you just for all of your hard work throughout the year.
Thank you.
Echoed for sure. Thank you very, very much.
All right, with that, I'm going to take over here and roll into middle school gifted services planning. So just want to take a few minutes for the benefit of the board, for the benefit of the community, to lay out in a little bit more detail the planning that we've been putting into the middle school gifted services for the upcoming school year. There's been some communication about this. There's been some planning regarding this. I do believe there's some misconceptions that are out there, and I also believe that we need to be a little bit clearer about what is being planned and how we are providing not just the same, but even a better level of service for gifted programming and our gifted students moving into next school year. So to start with that, I just want to kind of show you and give you a glimpse of what it looks like in a gifted schedule for this school year. So for 25-26, you'll see that there are obviously multiple periods in a day. At 10:21 to 10:51, there's a 6th grade intervention and enrichment period, which place the 6th grade gifted seminar takes place. 6th grade gifted students would have that gifted seminar every other day. So they would have it on an ACE day or a BDF day. So every other day, 90 days for the school year. 11:10 to 11:40, you have the same pull-out program for 7th grade gifted students. And then 11:59 to 12:29, you have the same pull-out 30 minutes every other day for 8th grade gifted students with the gifted teacher. In addition to that, our gifted teachers are available at both East and West from 1:50 till 2:30 every day. And students avail themselves of that advisory period to some extent, to a great extent. It's really more on the student and what they're working through and what they need than a scripted, this student must show up or that student must show up during that period. So in all, realistically, as we look through the bullets here, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade this year, gifted students are placed in an ELA course. They're in an ELA course with all other students that are enrolled in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, and they're supported in that class by their ELA teacher. Due to that method of scheduling, there's a wide variety of abilities in that course. You have your gifted learners, and then you have students that are at all other varying needs of support within that ELA course. The gifted teachers do provide the pullout. I kind of laid out to everyone how that looks. So 6th grade during that 10:20, 7th at 11:10, 8th at 11:59 with the option to go to advisory. But that's the level of support that our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade gifted students receive today. Obviously, they receive instruction in ELA. They receive instruction that's differentiated in all different areas. But again, there's a wide variety of ability levels in those courses. Specifically, right now, we're talking a little bit about ELA because we do have advanced math courses, either 1 year advanced or in some cases 2 years advanced at the middle level. What we are proposing, and it's been very widely communicated, that right now, while we have 2 gifted education teachers, one at Middle School East, one at Middle School West, we have proposed and we are moving forward with one gifted teacher that is split between the 2 buildings. However, when I mentioned that we are planning to have better support or additional support in that program, you can kind of see how things lay out here. First of all, by the way we schedule gifted learners into their ELA courses, we are looking to take those gifted students and cluster them in sections. So gifted learners will be with other gifted learners with a smattering of other high achievers that are placed in there. So I'm not lumping gifted learners with all high achievers, but the gifted learners will be in there, and the remainder of the course will be filled with other high achievers, thus narrowing that band or narrowing that level of differentiation that a teacher needs to work towards when teaching that course. In addition, it's supported in that class, there will be push-in support from the gifted teacher. So we're adding support in that typical ELA class. This is a 6th grade example. For 1st or 2nd grade, all gifted learners would be in 1st period ELA or 2nd period ELA clustered, and they would have push-in support from a gifted teacher every other day. Or potentially, we're still working out some of the finer details. It could be 3 days in a row at East and then 3 days in a row at West. Right now, prevailing wisdom says every other day because you get that push-in support a little bit more frequently rather than chunks. But there could be some back and forth in planning about how that works. The teacher would then have prep during 3rd period. We would have the same model for 6th grade gifted pullout, 7th grade gifted pullout, and 8th grade gifted pullout. We've been able to provide a co-planning period, so 6th grade teachers do have planning period during 8th period, and that gifted teacher would have co-planning period, again, every other day or at least 3 times a cycle at each building with the teacher that's teaching the gifted section of ELA. Mrs. Lofton?
So, Dr. Nicholson, going back to the slide that shows what is currently happening. So, right now, it looks like our gifted teachers are teaching during 3 periods. What is happening on all those, in all those blank periods?
In all those other periods, they're being assigned other duties. They may be covering a class, they may be doing hall duty or some other sort of duty, but they're not actively sharing face time with students.
Okay. So they're not working with their gifted
They're not
teacher
working with their
hat
gifted caseload
on.
at those times, correct?
Okay, okay.
And so it's tough because it's on 2 separate slides,
Sure.
but that's no problem. I just wanted to be able to understand that what you've explained with the current model for gifted services, that serves as an enrichment, not a curricular, a core curricular
That is correct.
differentiation.
That
It's an
is correct.
enrichment service.
That is an enrichment service above and beyond the ELA course that they're receiving. It's not curricular, it's not graded, it's not assessed.
Well, above and beyond all of their courses that they're
Correct.
receiving.
Yes, yes, yes.
Not just ELA, because there's some STEM.
STEM, yes.
Staff, totally different thing, because, it's infection. Okay, stay with me. The STEM enrichment also occurs during this gifted pullout block.
Correct.
There's STEM activities.
There's STEM activities, there's STEM
humanities.
extensions. Correct.
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 But with regards to the gifted learners currently for ELA, they're with a wide span
Yes.
grouping.
A wider span, yes.
Okay, so there's remediation and co-taught classrooms, but there are no current, that was a change that was made this year, that there are no gifted children in a co-taught classroom for remediation.
Correct.
For ELA, but they are still with
They are still with a
And learning.
much wider,
not gifted curriculum.
correct.
Okay. Not advanced curriculum.
Not advanced curriculum.
Okay. And so then, can you talk about how gifted services at the middle school as delivered now on this slide is different than the gifted services that are delivered in the elementary school?
Yes. Before I do, Dr. Wesson, were you on this slide just before I?
No, not on this slide.
Okay.
On your next.
Okay, so
I have another question before we move on, back to this slide. So if right now, students are split between ACE and BDF within a single school, and then the teacher then is split between schools by ACE, BDF, will we still be able to accommodate all the gifted learners? Like what, do we
Yes.
have?
yeah,
and I haven't
that'll be on
scrolled
slide. That'll be on the third slide of this that we'll get to in just
Great.
a minute. Yep. What I will say is in elementary, and I can lean on Mrs. O'Sullivan here maybe a little bit, they are also receiving, in my experience, they are also receiving 3 30-minute pullouts per cycle at the elementary level. Is that correct?
K2 is receiving 30-minute cycle, 3 times, I'm sorry, it's late. 30 minutes 3 times the cycle. 3-5 is receiving 30 minutes every day.
6 times the cycle.
Times the cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
Forgot about
And
that.
that's
Thank
an
you.
enrichment, not a curricular differentiation.
That is a pullout, yes,
Yes.
by the gifted teacher.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
And I guess if you could just, to really make sure that it's noted, can you explain the difference between an enrichment and a differentiation?
Yeah, so how I would define that is differentiation would be I am teaching a concept in a course, in a classroom, and I am teaching it to a wide variety of learners. So I am changing or adapting how I deliver that instruction. So each and every learner, no matter their ability, is able to receive that instruction and learn what they need to be able to know and do during that course. Enrichment would be above and beyond that. It would be in a different setting, and it would be somewhere where we were going beyond the curriculum to really challenge a student, extend the learning, change a little bit about how that curriculum is delivered to hit a different level and a different level of rigor with that student.
And that could be through a project-based assignment, or can you give us some other
Yeah,
examples?
absolutely. It could be part of a project. It could be real-world examples. It could be, some of the ideas we talked about, extending something in ecology out to the Purple Martin Birdhouse, out to the trail, the PV Woods. It could be a number of things. And in striving with gifted learners, there's some choice that we like to include as well, right? And how can we extend the learning in a way that student would best interpret that or best be involved in the learning themselves. So, you're able to take it from a class of 25 to a smaller group or to a little bit more of a, for lack of a better term, a passion project to really extend the learning for that individual student and work beyond the typical standards in the classroom that you're tied to.
Well, and not even for lack of a better term, it actually is coined a passion project. that they work towards within that elementary school setting. I don't know if every single building does that, but I know at Skip Back in the gifted program, they did work towards a passion project, which was sometimes out of context to a young learner that is gifted, just anecdotally. So I think that one of the things that my takeaways in the conversations we've had up to this point is that what I am, and correct me if I'm wrong and I'm paraphrasing, what we are trying to do as a district and what I see you trying to initiate is actually differentiation of gifted education as opposed to enrichment-driven delivery for gifted identified students.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And, you know, we've been doing the enrichment, we've been doing the pullout, that has been occurring, but that's all that's been occurring. This is adding that differentiation.
For actually the curricular.
For the curricular side of
Core
things.
subject areas.
Correct.
Just like math is differentiated based
Just like
on
math
level.
is differentiated and advanced 1 year or two. We're looking to differentiate. We're looking to push into that 6th grade ELA. And then this last bullet here, as we all well know, we're planning for that 7th and 8th grade honors ELA for the 27-28 school year and beyond. Again,
As a
to
soft start
differentiate.
for this year.
Correct.
Okay. And so gifted services will just be, it's not eliminated or watered down. The delivery of how gifted needs will be met is just shifting from, again,
Purely enrichment to differentiation.
purely
and
enrichment, which is a nice to have. It's an extra, and it's a great way for an expansive
It
opportunity.
meets chapter 16, but it does not go above or beyond.
And it leaves I think it probably leaves many gifted learners frustrated in classrooms that there is a wide span of abilities in a core class.
I agree.
Right. This is just a very quick, very basic question. I understand what you mean by pull out, but I don't know what you mean by push in support. Can you just explain that a little
Sure,
bit?
absolutely. So push in support, we've talked quite a bit about co-teaching when we talk about special ed and we talk about students with IEPs. A push in support with a gifted education teacher would be similar, working with that teacher to help differentiate, to help extend the lesson while in the core curriculum, while in the core ELA course. So you're taking a second teacher, they have co-planning to really plan whether it's stations, whether it's different types of rotations to really go beyond what one teacher can do in a classroom when you take these gifted learners that really learn differently and they have different ways of expressing themselves. It's able to help further differentiate that. I put some weird emphasis there, to further differentiate what's happening in the class, along with a couple of those high achievers that would be sprinkled in there.
So
Again,
you've got two teachers basically co-teaching the class.
correct.
All right.
And so it would almost be as though gifted services, like in the GIEP, I know we always say is different than an IEP and the requirements and also oversight around that. But it would be a similar model to, like you said, a remedial co-teaching class, but it would just be on the other side of the pendulum.
Correct. Instead of remediation, it would be extension.
Okay. And then with regards to why at middle level this has been such a focus versus changing what is currently happening at the elementary level or what's happening at the high school level you don't just unbecome gifted identified. So, and I know that Dr. Moulton really laid it out by elementary, middle, and high school. Can you talk about why that's a focus for you at the middle level versus at the high school level, and what type of structures are in place for core subject areas at the middle level versus the high school level?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And Dr. Moulton, you can jump in and clean this up. But, realistically, at the high school level, we have a bevy of courses that are, academic, they're honors, they're AP. There are various levels that could service students at various abilities and really can push students and not leave them feeling as if they're not challenged. As we went through and moved through the gifted review and looked at really where we excelled, there were a couple areas where we needed to adjust more structurally at the high school, but the services being provided were really meeting the needs of learners. Likewise, at the elementary, the review really showed there were very small structural changes to be made that we're putting in place for next year, but realistically, the services delivered were of high quality. Middle school is really where things fell a little flat because we were providing 90 minutes per cycle of enrichment through the pull-out, but we weren't really going beyond that. We weren't doing anything on top of that. So this is our answer to that. We do believe that this goes above and beyond, both in the core ELA class with the push-in and the second teacher, working with that teacher and really shrinking the delta in differentiation and continuing to do what we've always done with the pull-out, the passion projects, and the seminars during the I&E periods.
And this, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think for me, because of when I grew up and came up through school, as I guess us around the table probably had similar experiences, when classes were leveled, it seems like this was like, it just wasn't as much of a conversation. And I know that there was a pendulum switch for an inclusionary model, and I think that that's appreciated, and there's value seen in that, and we've put a lot of focus on that, especially in this district. But Dr. Russell, are you able to speak to, from like a historical standpoint, when did PV stop leveling with like an honors English class at the middle level?
In my experience, and I supported Mr. Marsh opening West back in 2004,
Right.
there was never a leveled class.
Even then, there was not.
No, there was not.
Okay, and
there
I
was
guess
no leveled class.
I wonder if that was
outside
a district
of math.
outside of math ever. Okay,
yeah.
because I mean I remember from all through middle school there was honors level classes, and then there were
Yeah.
regular level
Yeah.
classes.
There are times when, because of scheduling and because of those accelerated math students, they move together as a cohort, thank you, so that sometimes naturally in the schedule, a lot of them will end up together in science and or social studies and or ELA, but it's not fine-tuned. We would like to really fine-tune the system and provide a similar experience to
True
our
equity
students,
and differentiation.
yes, in ELA, like we do in math.
Okay. I just wanted to, I didn't know if there was ever that, and then we got away from it.
No, I'm not aware that there ever was.
Okay.
Even prior to 2004.
It
There
just
could
wasn't the
have been.
district's practice.
It
And
was
I didn't
not.
come, I didn't
It
go to
was
school
not.
in Pennsylvania, so that's why, just for
Right.
context, I was looking for that.
Yeah.
And I will say my experience has been that in other districts, there have been leveled courses or courses that were specifically designed for gifted learners, honors level courses at the middle level. So, we're looking to head that way. We're looking to be able to differentiate that way and really push students not just as part of their pull-out program, but part of their core content and their, as we talk about tier 1 instruction in the classroom, we want them to feel challenged.
Okay, and that's really it's candid and helpful conversation, because I know a lot of times you don't want to pigeonhole or label associated with any one group, and that's, kind of the reasoning behind a full inclusion model. But at the same time, I guess the conversations that I've had anecdotally and then also through lived experience and then, with my time on the board, a GIEP differentiation should exist in the same way, in my view, as an IEP differentiation. It's just a different lane. That's
Right.
just my personal view.
No, I don't disagree with you. We need to be providing what gifted learners need to make sure they reach their highest potential. And we feel this model will help with that. So, yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of sum things up, there's been some questions asked about the total cohort size and how many gifted students will have and how that will proceed. So I&E pull-out sections and advisory will still provide the enrichment. We'll keep those class sizes at equal to or below 20 because that is part of Chapter 16.
How do you do that with some of those cohorts that are listed in the table below?
Sure, because we do have the I&E period, we also have the advisory period. So we're still working through some of the logistics on that, but using advisory, right now advisory is, as I said, it's a come if you would like to, come if you need to. We can use some of those advisory periods for some of the students for their pullout. We feel it'd be better utilized as a pullout than a 3 or 4 or 5 students coming to get a little bit of additional. So bringing that equity to all students, they all have the same experience, they all have that pullout the same amount of time. So able to use not just the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade I&E, but the advisory to break up some of these cohorts to keep them under 20.
So I guess the only question that I have around that would be with regard to music.
Right. And that obviously specifically in
8th grade.
those that would be going to the advisory,
Oh, okay.
we would make sure that we scheduled the folks and the students that are music and athletics. That happens at
Athletics
the
as
end
well,
of the
they have
day.
to leave, right?
They would be during the I&E period specifically,
Okay.
so that would not hamper their ability to have that pullout. And the students that are not necessarily in music or athletics or any after-school activities would be at the end of the day.
So there wouldn't be a force for a choice. There would be no barrier.
There'd be no barrier.
Okay.
Yep, you would not have to choose music or gifted services
Or
athletics
or gifted
or
services. Okay.
any other whatever you might have at the end of the day.
Special. Okay,
Correct.
got it, got it.
Yep. Yeah, there's no choice of you need to lose FCS if you want your gifted services.
Would that have an effect on the actual size of the group then, with it being in the advisory period? Or is your goal to try and get, if you're using these 3 time periods, would it be to try and get equal size groups into all 3?
I think the goal would be to get equal sized groups into all 3, but we'd have to look at the specifics of the students in the cohort to make sure it equals
Now, I
out.
understand we're talking
Yeah.
scheduling
Yeah.
and numbers,
Yeah,
but
I
I
mean,
just
yeah.
want to know what the goal would be on that, because I wouldn't want to see the people that are taking it in the advisories period either have
Too
less
many. Right.
or more of an
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah,
Either
we don't-
way, I
yeah.
think it needs to be balanced across the 3.
And that would probably fluctuate, obviously.
We-
Yeah, of
yeah.
course, of
Yeah,
course.
we
Yeah.
can't get that granular. As long as if I know that the goal
Keeping, yeah, right, keeping
is
it,
to try to
eye on
keep
it, right.
them
That would be the goal.
reasonably equal.
Yeah. We know we can't go above 20
Understood.
either way. So, but we don't want 20 here and 6 here, I think is your point. And the goal will be to keep it more equal, 16s, 15s, rather than a 20 and a 5.
Yeah, because
Yep.
you see what I'm saying. Just
Yep.
from a delivery of
Absolutely.
service point of view, if
Yep.
everybody should be in the same boat.
Agreed. Gifted teacher caseload, that's come up as a conversation as well. Gifted teacher caseload cannot exceed 65. We have seen, and I've also experienced in other districts, the ability to move GIEPs and distribute them among other teachers instead of duty periods. We feel with the caseload numbers we have here that there will be teachers that were able to distribute some of the duty periods around and have them provide GIEP support and hold those meetings. Specifically, the position has been posted internally. If it needs to be, it will be posted externally as well. There have also been some questions about certification. For gifted services, there is no required certification. There is an endorsement, which we would prefer. However, again, in my experience, teachers that move into gifted often go for some coursework and get that certification or that endorsement after the fact. Because they're passionate about helping high-end achievers, they're passionate about helping gifted learners and working with them. They end up going back for that endorsement at a later time or date. But again, it's not necessary. There's no specific certification that's needed for that position. And in any circumstance, we've already had conversations with MCIU. There is an individual there that's going to provide at least 5 sessions next year with the gifted teacher and the 6th grade ELA teachers to support that push-in model. So to really give them the professional development they need, to give them the background they need to be successful in those period 1 and 2 courses, we have that IU person that's going to come in, start with a whole group session to kind of lay a groundwork and then do some in-class, in-school coaching with those folks to make sure that this is a successful rollout.
I believe that the gifted offering for the high school for 9th and 10th grade is ELA. So I was curious about the selection of ELA for, the push-in. Because it just feels like it, over time, it ends up being very heavy on ELA and not maybe science or, social studies.
Yeah, and we selected ELA just because of the skills that are gleaned from ELA and the ability to move students along. I think, and maybe I'm speaking a little out of turn, but my vision for the honors is to not just have honors in 7th and 8th grade and not just in ELA in the future, but to continue to roll this forward as time goes by. It's a big chunk. We've already talked about the curriculum work that's happening, and we really want to be thoughtful in our planning of some of these things moving forward, but I really do see this is a starting point. This isn't the final destination. This is not we're going to do this and then we're done. This is really that starting point to start moving towards something where we can really make sure we're hitting those high-end learners and those gifted students' needs, not just in ELA, but as a starting point ELA.
Ms. Brady, do you mean at the middle level or do you mean in general?
Just that, so if ELA is a focus in, I guess, 6th grade of gifted services, it's the enrichment, but, I'm sorry, it's a lot of interchangeable, long story. So many terms, but so 6th grade is, an ELA emphasis, and then 9th and 10th grade are also a gifted, program. So just over time, it ends up being a lot of gifted emphasis on ELA.
Oh, I understand
and not
what you're
other
saying now.
areas.
So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I would add just as well, at the middle school, at the middle level, we have the advanced math. And in 9th and 10th grade, there are also advanced courses and AP courses that can be taken
That's what I was
outside
going to
of
offer.
ELA
It
as well.
differentiates once it gets to the high
it does
school.
differentiate a little bit more at the high school. And again, we'd like to see that differentiation move forward at the middle level, not just ELA, but it's a starting point.
And I would say, except for a cohort, and I guess there could be specific conversation around it, gifted ELA for 9th and 10th grade, I think is a pretty similar model to the honors ELA for 9th and 10th grade. And then there's an AP above and beyond that.
Right, yeah, then there's also
Specialized.
AP, right, there's, AP, ELA in 11th or.
11th and 12th,
lit
but
and
it's not,
Lang,
AP
but I
is not
forget which-
available in 9th or
correct,
10th
9th and 10th
grade
for
at
ELA.
the ELA
Correct.
level, which is, I think, why there's still that gifted.
Right. There are
offering.
accessible
Right.
math and specifically social studies, probably science.
In 9th grade and 10th
yeah.
grade, correct. You can take an AP in 9th grade for social studies and not math. Not math, there's not. In 9th grade for
No,
math.
probably not.
But to Ms. Brady's point, students are, I'm thinking of where, like those spider plots where, you're really strong here and like you're going out in all those different directions. And so some students are going to be, really have a very strong STEM aptitude, whereas, they'll qualify as gifted, but ELA is not the strength of their aptitude, So it still doesn't feel like it's meeting the needs of those students who have an aptitude that's not ELA.
Well, but there's leveled
Yeah.
math already,
But it's not, just like it's.
and there's currently no science or social studies of any enrichment. So the pullout would take care
pullout
of
can
the
take care of some
enrichment
of
of
that,
the
right.
STEM and the,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
pullout
All right.
is not ELA
No,
specific.
you're right.
the enrichment services are mostly STEM and social driven in general.
I remember one was like a food, they did like a whole food unit.
I think
they
it's
did like a
Very
science-
cross-curricular.
It's exactly, so
It's-
there's
yeah,
a,
you're-
right.
Okay.
There's a
that's fair.
forensics thing that they do, there's a space thing that they do.
Yeah, I remember the space thing.
The passion project can be any subject matter.
Okay.
So I guess it could be an ELA subject if it was a special interest of Shakespeare or something. But we chose spiders one year and it was really, really rough. So, but to that point, that would be where the enrichment piece of it
Correct.
comes in.
Correct.
All right, that's fair.
But it's not forcing, it's keeping the cohort together, but not forcing the strength in one particular area.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Two questions. One's concerning, I guess I was kind of thinking about this from before about the advisory period, and that's a longer time period than the other ones when I look at the schedule there. How is that differentiation of time between those that are in the advisory and those that are not? How is that going to be handled? Is it going to be, I don't want to say cut down for, in the advisory period, but what are your thoughts on that?
As far as the additional 10 minutes in advisory?
Correct.
That's something we can look at. That's something we need to kind of determine. We haven't had those deep conversations yet exactly how that will look. But you're right, there'd be an extra 30 minutes a cycle for the students that are in advisory. Mr. Crean, I don't know if there are other things that happen in advisory that might eat up some of that time. I know it's listed as 40 minutes, but not all 40-minute periods are created equally. I'll lean on you there just at the end of the day. I know I was at a building, I think I was at your building, maybe it was East, that had first dismissal, second dismissal, and things started a little bit earlier as far as dismissal goes. So is the 40 minutes actually 40 minutes?
All periods are created unequally, but so when it comes, they all have a very somewhat inconsistent kind of beginning and end at times. But anyway, I think we're also looking at ways where maybe it's not just one section, all three advisories, and that's the same section. Maybe they're shared by section, so that we're sharing advisory in a way where it's not always one kid's being taken out of that time, because there's other things they can be participating in as well. So we want to be able to balance schedules, maybe sharing the I&E and the advisory with the same section so that they're not always pulled out of the same thing.
So maybe some sort of rotation between I&E and advisory.
And trying to balance it time-wise so it's not some kids have that 40-minute time and some kids have that 30-minute time.
Fair.
Yeah. But we're still working on a lot of those details as of this morning.
Thank you.
Yep, definitely sounds like we're working out details on this. It gets more complicated the more you look at it. Yeah, I should just stop looking at it then, right? Anyway.
Good question. All good questions.
Thank you. Next, about the limit, the maximum of 65 for the teacher that's going to be doing this. And I understand in previous presentations, we've said, well, it's not a big problem, we can get a waiver. And that waiver's been granted before. Now this, as of tonight, it looks like we're not attempting to seek a waiver. We're looking to keep that under the maximum of 65, which I support that. I think that's much better than going the waiver route. How is that going to work, though, in that the 65, up to 65 would be assigned to this gifted teacher, and then whatever the remainder is, I guess, whether it be 5, 10, would be, quote, assigned to another teacher, if I'm reading this correctly.
Correct.
That's fine for the paperwork. How is that going to work in the practical, in building things? Does that mean, is this going to be a reality where this other teacher that's taking on this, whatever this number is beyond 65, are they going to be is that going to be the person that the student's interacting with? I just want to make sure that I understand the mechanics of this.
Yeah, the case manager would not necessarily have to be somebody that the student is interacting with. We do have a mechanism through the collective bargaining agreement with PVEA that teachers that are assigned these, there's some stipulations there of how that works. and it is something that's frequently done at the high school. So the gifted teacher at the high school does not carry all of the gifted students on their caseload. They're a distribution of the paperwork to other teachers, and they help kind of coordinate that. But yes, we're not going to go over the 65. We're not going to go over the 20. So we're not looking for a waiver of any of that. We are looking to just distribute those additional GIEPs and really work through that process to make sure that the students have the paperwork, but the person they'll be interacting with from the gifted standpoint, 6th grade, they'll have the push-in first and second period and the pull-outs, and 7th and 8th will have the pull-outs as they always have.
And I guess I would just add to that, with regards to the GIEP meetings that are happening annually for each student, it's not just between the student and parents and the gifted teacher.
Right.
Currently, there's a core area teacher, generally somebody from the team, and then there's an LEA in the room. So either an administrator, go ahead.
I was going to say there's at least 4 or 5. I would say at least 3 to 4 folks that are in the room as part of the collaborative team.
To talk about not only about the progress of the student directly, but also the goals and then
For the future.
the execution for the future, right?
No,
That's how the GIP meetings are run.
No, understood. And I
Just for the record that I say it.
Yeah, we do a lot of talking, just for the record sometimes, but no, I appreciate that and, the explanation of how that's working. Thank you.
How does a person who's not providing the services or like involved in the services, like help set the goals and determine, the person's progress towards the goals?
Yeah, so typically the case manager would have a meeting with the student. They would get some input from the gifted teacher. They would get some input from the classroom teacher ahead of time. But as in an IEP meeting, there's no predetermination that comes in, right? Those goals are a collaborative process in the meeting. So it's facilitated by that case manager. They're ultimately, they're on the hook to set up the meeting. They are looked to finalize the paperwork, but it's a collaborative process, taking input from the family, taking input from the student, and taking input from the classroom teachers. So it's not just, a one-person show that who don't interact with you necessarily, are writing your goals for you, but I'm collecting all that data, and then as a team, we're deciding what that looks like.
And I think it's important to point out that IEP and GIP writing, it's the formal documentation of it. It's not the same thing as a parent-teacher conference that you would have.
Right.
It's a different mechanism, and it's a different review process and dialogue that happens during that.
Yeah, in many ways, the parent-teacher conference is reporting the news. Right, I'm sharing with you how your child is
You're
doing in class.
interacting with that child directly, and
Right, I've had your child I've had your child in class for a marking period now. This is some of the work the child has done. This is where I see the child as thriving. This is where they need some help. The GIP is that collaborative process where we're sitting down and taking input from the child as well.
And what the goals
what
are,
their
what
goals
their
are,
strengths
where
are,
they
weaknesses.
see themselves.
Right.
It was mentioned that we've had to have waivers for exceeding 60. That we've had to have waivers for exceeding the 65 maximum. Is that true? That was something I wasn't aware of, that we've ever had to have a waiver. I don't think we've.
Yeah, we, in my experience, we applied for a waiver once before several years ago, and it was when we went over 20 students in a high school gifted English class here, and we were approved for that. It was a couple of students over 20. I don't know that we've ever gone over the 65. I'm not aware of that. In addition, if I could, just to come back to Ms. Bridie's question, we have the model in place at the high school where we divide those GIEPs, and they are picked up by teachers who typically have the gifted students in their classes, so they get to know them. And we've also found it helpful that teachers are really immersed in a GIEP much more closely than they would otherwise be immersed. It's not the gifted services teacher alone who's developing that GIEP. Now it's somebody who's actually interacting with a gifted student and has to figure out, be knowledgeable of the goals and figure out the specially designed instruction that that student is eligible to receive. That can be helpful in conversations with other teachers too. So there can be a benefit to actually expanding who touches a GIEP, presuming they have the professional learning to know how to write and prepare a GIEP and then implement it.
And there is some situation at the high school especially, I would imagine, that there is not the same GIEP case manager year over year. It could change between years based on just caseload and et cetera. So
And teaching. Okay. Any other questions or comments around the table? Go ahead, Mrs.
I
Wilson.
just think that, if you are working with a teacher, with your student, and then you're sitting down to have a progress meeting with somebody who, everybody just met each other, and they're supposed to be able to act as the informed leader of determining what the goals for your child are, that's not necessarily an effective way to do things.
So it's the case manager starts the process and gets the process going, right? But then you're having a team meeting, and in that GIEP, that's where these goals can start to get developed and be able to be more explicit to that student.
And I would add, they are data-driven. They are not just created based on someone's opinion or judgment. They are data-driven.
And I think that's what my point was, is that it's not a parent-teacher conference. It's a documentation meeting, which is, they've been much different. I mean, so we're at, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 8 years of GIEP meetings has never been in the format of a parent-teacher conference. It's
No,
always been
absolutely
in
not.
terms of
Right.
reviewing.
Because
But it's always been clear to me that, like, on the documentation, as you're reading through the GIEP, there are actually anecdotes and blurbs from the teachers that gave feedback associated with the different goals. Like, the document is actually written that way.
Great.
Okay. I mean, and listen, I don't know, I'm not saying that there's always a perfect continuity of practice, but I think that, to me, what this whole presentation is about, and the conversations that we've had for the last 6 years that I've been on the board have been about, is improving gifted services and enriching gifted services and delivery. So if there has not been continuity historically, then that's something that I'm hoping would be correcting.
Well, and that's what my concern is that if somebody's actually teaching 111 students, whereas the maximum caseload is supposed to be 65, just making sure that we're setting everybody up for success.
But this is saying that the format of that application is changing. One person is not going to be teaching 111 students.
And just to be
But they
clear, it's
are,
not,
aren't
to be clear, it's when you talk about the caseload of 65, it's the paperwork side of things. It's not the teaching load, it's not the number of, you can't go beyond 20 gifted students in a section, and you can't go beyond 65 GIEPs for the paperwork process on a teacher, because that is a lot. They will be teaching 111 students. They will, over the course of their time, see those students between the push-in and the pull-out.
See them, but not be the only one
But not be
responsible.
exactly,
That's
not be
my
the
point.
only one responsible for them. But, our typical classroom teachers see far more than 111 in their typical teaching load as well. So, this is expanding the responsibilities to the push-in side of things for the gifted teacher, but it's balancing that paperwork and making sure that, we're meeting the students' needs.
Are there other questions around the table? Are there questions from the audience that have not been addressed? If you could come to the microphone, sir, and if you don't mind saying your name. This is a little bit more informal, but sort of formal, so we won't time limit you, but, it's 9 o'clock. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Is it on? Yeah, it's great. Okay.
PA Chapter 16, you said the limit is 65. So I believe the intent for that is for the gifted teacher to have a limit of 65. If you're taking additional students and divvying them up among I guess, teachers that are not trained for gifted students, I think that's just not meeting the intent of Chapter 16, right? I mean, just help me understand that a little bit.
I'm sorry, so you're asking
So chapter 16, there is a limit of 65 students for the gifted students. So here, we're just taking those extra students beyond 65 and divvying them into teachers that are not specialized in gifted students, right?
For the purposes of the paperwork and completing the GIEP process, that is correct.
But just to circle, I just want to make sure that we clarify. So you stated this a little bit earlier, and I think this is, I'm sorry, Dr. Russell, I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
So the gifted teacher is assigned the gifted teacher role, but they're not certified in any different fashion than any other teacher that is licensed to teach in Pennsylvania. They may have an endorsement associated with their interest in giftedness, but they're not a chemistry teacher, for example, in the high school teaches chemistry. You need to have a chemistry certificate to teach. Can you talk more about the reason that the gifted teacher is the gifted teacher versus the math teacher is the math teacher, or the, can you talk more about certification? Because I think that there's a misconception about the gifted teacher is that teacher because that's what they're certified to teach.
Right, okay. So I may have misunderstood the question. So yes, the gifted teacher would not necessarily have any certification above and beyond a teaching certificate of any nature. They need to be a certified teacher. They do not need to have the gifted endorsement, at least to begin. We would like them to eventually get that potentially. But a gifted teacher needs to be a certified teacher. That teacher will be providing the gifted services for the 111 students. The 65 is the max number of GIEP paperwork or GIP meetings or GIP caseload for that designated gifted teacher. The others for the paperwork process would be distributed to other teachers that have that student in class, potentially, hopefully interact with that student in class. But the teacher of the gifted would still be the person that's responsible for the push-in classes and the pull-out classes for both schools. I hope I understood the question and answered it correctly now.
Kind of answers that, but so you mentioned that the additional teachers that you're hiring, you train them from now till September. What's that training involved?
Yeah, so there will be a baseline training. The first training, the very first meeting would be with the gifted teacher and the two teachers for which that gifted teacher is pushing into in ELA to help them work through some of the process of that co-teaching and differentiating between the students that are in the class. There will definitely be additional PD. There may be some seminars. There may be some conferences that the teacher goes to, depending on their background, right? We don't know who that teacher is right now, so it's a little bit difficult to tell you exactly what the training will be. If that person comes from outside the district with 15 years of gifted teaching experience, it may be very limited. If we find a teacher that's phenomenal and loves kids and wants to work with gifted students, we may need to start with a little bit different training for that teacher. So we really need to see who the candidate is. We need to make sure that they are trained in how to meet the needs of gifted learners and how to push in and really differentiate and enrich those gifted students.
All right, thank you. So one last thing. So how would you measure that this is being successful, like after first 3 months or whatever?
Yeah, no, I agree. 3 months would be too soon. I would say after 6 to 9 months, March or April of next year, I think we need to get feedback from students. I think we need to get some feedback from parents. We need to certainly get feedback from the teachers that are in the classroom, just to see where this has gone and what this looks like. As I mentioned earlier, this is not the destination. This is a starting point to push our gifted program forward and really build from where we're at to something better. Doesn't mean this is the end all be all. That does not mean we're not going to, maybe switch streams in 9 months or so as we get that feedback. But certainly we'll measure, both quantitative and qualitative data, just seeing how it's going in the classroom. We'll do walkthroughs. We'll visit classrooms. We'll see what it looks like and what it feels like, and really if we're meeting the needs of the gifted learners.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
I wondered if I could just, before you ask Mrs. Bonacamper your question or share your comment, if I could just offer just an enhancement to some of what was just explained. When we think about that 65 and wondering about the gifted services teacher, I'd like to point out that, and offer some reassurance, we are really trying to shift from enrichment only to core content area academics that are more rigorous. And our teachers work with gifted students right now in those core content areas. However, they are not clustered or concentrated in the ways that we would like to move forward towards. So please know that teachers have experience working with our gifted learners every day, and they differentiate to accommodate their needs. What we would like to do is support putting gifted learners together in a more concentrated manner and bring that rigor into the academic realm and not only have it as enrichment in that I&E period.
And then, Dr. Russell, I was just thinking as you were talking about that, about the integration, truly the true integration of the gifted curriculum for those students. And I was thinking about resumes of teachers. So elementary school gifted teachers are elementary school teachers. They have an elementary cert.
Correct.
And so then middle school gifted teachers, I don't know what their resumes are of the ones that are departing us, but they're either science teachers or they were a math teacher.
Or they're elementary certified teachers.
Sometimes.
Yep.
Yep.
They can be any cert.
Right,
under
but they
PA.
need to be certified because they're not teaching a subject area that requires separate certification.
Right, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep,
So,
thank you.
Can I sit? Is that okay? Oh, awesome. Okay, I'm Carrie Bonacamper again. I think I'll start by saying I think one of the biggest concerns is not what you're trying to do. I think what you're trying to do is awesome. I honestly heard the biggest concern was that the middle school gifted program was lacking, seriously lacking, and you obviously found that in your studies. I think the concern is the cut of a teacher. And to keep hearing like, oh, well, when we find somebody who is gonna come and say, yeah, I can't wait to get stretched super thin between two buildings, that's gonna be a great time, I want that job. Who is that going to be? Are we going to get the best person? Are we going to get someone who wants to get their foot in the door at PV and maybe they aren't the best person? I think that's really where the concern's coming, at least for me personally. When I reached out to you, I said, I'm not against change. When you guys wanted to move us all out to West, I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to join this ship. If you feel like it's the best thing, I'm here. If you want it, like, I hear what you're saying and what you want to do. I want the best. I do have concerns about what happens when ELA isn't that gifted child's strong area. I know like right now, when we do the pullout, it is very STEM-based. And now you're saying that still there is going to be pullout where they will do more STEM-based. So are they going to get put in, are they still going to be assessed to make sure that this, what's your word? Not cohort, is a cohort of cluster, yes, I knew it was a C word. That this cluster, that these just because they're gifted, are they really supposed to be in there as well? Because you have, gifted in a lot of ways, but are we still assessing them with all their stuff that they belong in that kind of an ELA just because the gifted teacher is pushing in there and they are a gifted student?
Yeah, I think to answer that question, that's a great question. I think that's one of the reasons why we're not currently looking at honors in sixth grade, because not every, as you said, not every gifted student is gifted in the ways of ELA. However, they're being grouped in there, and there will be push-in support in there. But the curriculum will be the same, and they'll be extended as far as they're able to be extended by that push-in support. So the differentiation will be there. And if they're not gifted in ELA, we won't necessarily be pushing them to limits that they aren't able to get to. And there's no need, if they're in that 6th grade cluster in ELA, that they necessarily need to go to 6th grade or 7th grade honors the following year. If they're not gifted in that way, if they're not interested in that, it's not locked into a life sentence of honors ELA or gifted ELA at even the high school. But this is one way that we can provide additional support for gifted students above and beyond what we're currently doing today.
And the gifted is an identification, but there are also other data points that are taken into consideration with regards to, like, I don't know what metric you would use for providing, like, advanced, proficient, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when we look at, we have not yet developed, and that will be part of the process with teachers as we look at honors level. But when we look at our advanced math, we put rubrics together to look at achievement data and to look at, and Dr. Handerhan can talk if we need to get into it a little bit more about that. But really, what are those guideposts that students need to be able to do to be in those higher level courses? So it's just because they're gifted doesn't mean they're gifted in every which way, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have to move into honors level ELA. But it is one way to have that additional differentiation. And for many of them, not all, but for many of them, that will push them a little bit more than they would have in a typical classroom as we schedule it today.
And I have one more question. With the breakdown, I'll admit my eyes were having a hard time, but when you showed the plan and then we were talking about to avoid the 20, that maybe there's going to be a class that meets during advisory, but now that you've got this teacher only at Middle School East 3 days a week, and if you need to have an advisory class 3 days a week, now that's not an optional class for my son to just go in at advisory time. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
That the teacher won't be there at the right time for the right moment.
Well, yeah, that teacher, so that teacher's meeting with these 11 kids because this is the time they can be met with because we've got too many kids to meet at 10 o'clock, so now they're coming at advisory. But on that day that my son can come because he is an instrument person and he's doing the other stuff, he wants to come in and that's his time. But because this teacher's only there 3 days, now he doesn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, I think we can look at ways, if there's work that's being done, I think we can look at ways that we could have that room open and we could have that staffed. We may not have the gifted teacher in there on that off day, but I think we could probably look at having someone in there to oversee where the students can be in there working on those passion projects and doing those things. They may not have the guidance of the gifted teacher at that time, but it's advisory. It's a more free period for students to get what they need. So I don't know that there's going to be an issue with staffing that room. If your child's at East and they're at West that day, there may be somebody, there may be a math teacher in there or a phys ed teacher that's at least overseeing what's happening. They may not be much help that day, but they can certainly get in there and work on whatever STEM-related project and then get some more guidance the next day.
Well, thank you so much. I do think that really comes down to being the huge concern that everyone's having is that there's a lot of wait and see. Maybe there's a teacher, we're going to train them, and we'll have to see what happens, and maybe we'll find a custodian to hop on in and watch out for the kids, and we're not going to have a gifted teacher to build those connections with. I mean, that's just the biggest concern, is that we have 2 teachers now, and we're cutting a teacher and changing everything. I just feel like it feels backwards that you would not keep 2 teachers to bring a new program in, to make it strong, to make it work, and then adjust down later. And that's my concern.
Thank you.
My name is Avi White. I'm a 10th grade gifted student at PV. And I also had a little bit of concerns about not necessarily the programs that were being discussed, but the way they were being discussed. And if new things for gifted are being developed, I'm concerned that they're not being developed with the right image of gifted learners in mind. The first thing that I heard that I was personally a little bit concerned about was there were some references of gifted students and high achieving students being used interchangeably when those are not at all the same things. There are gifted students that are not high achievers, and there are high achievers that are not qualified. They are not identified as gifted. And I think that if we're looking at gifted students as high achievers, we're not actually meeting their needs, because I feel like I've been looked at a high achiever as a gifted student my entire school career, and my needs have not been met in that way. And the other thing that I thought was of concern was, I thought that was great that you guys talked about plans to expand gifted enrichment and advanced classes in the middle level for science and for social studies. But there was also implications that an honors course or an AP course is equivalent to an enrichment, and it just isn't. They're not the same kind of class. Being in the high school in a gifted honors English class versus a regular honors English class this year is two very different class experiences, and an honors class is not comparable to a class designed for gifted education, because giftedness is a different way of thinking, not just being smarter. That was all I had to say.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I agree with you as far as the difference in thinking between a gifted student and a high achiever. I think that's a great delineation, and it is, I don't know that I did a phenomenal job of explaining. When we look at adding some high achievers to a gifted cluster of students, it's really to make sure that we're lowering the delta in the differentiation, right? Right now, those gifted students are in with a vast array of students, and I'm sure you've experienced that over time. We're really trying to close that gap, and we'll be very intentional, thank you, with those high achievers that are going into that course. It's not an honors course, it's not a gifted course, but we really want to intentionally lower that delta so the differentiation can be made a little bit easier with those two teachers working with those students. So I appreciate your thoughts, I appreciate your comments. It was very well said.
All right, I'm Kate Zappla. Dr. Russell loves to tell me that I like the what ifs. So I've got some what ifs. It's hard because I wear a lot of hats. I'm a mom of a gifted student, and I do have concerns about how this is going to look for him next year. He's already been asking. Gifted's not the same at middle level as it was at elementary. He was getting it every day. He's coming up now, he's only getting it 3 days a week. They're used to very small groupings. The groupings at West, they're not horrible, so they'll double. But he's used to having that support every day. And this year, he's just not loving gifted the same way, because at the middle level, we have fallen short for a very long time. I'm super excited that these changes are finally coming. I have been on the gifted task force since he was in 2nd grade, so it's been a long time coming. I do have concerns also about the going down to the one teacher, because as a teacher, 2 buildings is a lot. We see other teachers that are going between buildings, and the burnout for teachers is really real right now. So I can't not speak from both roles. And also with how our schedule currently looks, and knowing the principals are trying to put this together right now, to get a GIEP duty period would be great, but we are not like the high school in where we have a duty period every day. We have 2 duty periods a cycle, and then the other 4 days are for team meetings, and they are for PLCs. I'm also concerned about the co-planning period, because that co-planning period for like our math and our ELA teachers is also when they co-plan with the special ed teacher. So I'm wondering if the gifted teacher is only there every other day, how that looks if that teacher also has then a co-teacher for special ed. When are they getting that? So I'd hate to see us cut the progress we've made with our PLCs and our teams and all of that that supports our middle school learners who are wonderfully amazing kids, but need a lot of love because middle school is a rough time. How we're going to be able to support them when we don't necessarily have these extra periods to do this stuff. Love the idea of an honors STEM course. I will volunteer to teach that if we get there. I just have a lot of concerns that cutting right now, before we've built that, is going to be really challenging for that teacher to do push-ins every other day. Like we're currently co-teaching as an everyday model. And also the developing of the 7th and 8th grade honors curriculum. When are they going to have time to have say in that if they're only there every other day and all of their periods are kind of spoken for? So that's just some kind of food for thought about how our middle school level currently works. And I know our principals are already stretched thin and we're going down teachers next year. So saying, hey, now I need an extra duty period every day, is that going to be doable for them? It's just another wrench to throw in that scheduling.
Sure. No, and I appreciate that, and I may look to Mr. Creedon here because, as he mentioned earlier, planning is going on, and conversations were had this morning, and none of these conversations or none of these plans have been made in a vacuum without input from the middle school administrative team. So they're well aware of these conversations. They've been integral in these conversations and have assured us that all of these things that we're talking about and all of these things that we're planning are doable. So. If that's incorrect, Mr. Creedon, let me know. But understanding is you're on the ground floor, and everything we've talked about is something that can be put in play.
No, you're correct in all your points. And there's change happening. So I think just trying to continue to wrap our heads around the change, and I know that was a good point about the planning periods. Those things are certainly things we're considering as we process it all.
Yeah, thank you. And things obviously will look different next year with multiple changes happening, right? There are changes happening across the board, and it's a time to reset some of the pieces and really, I think we've taken a long view and we've really been methodical in our planning. But as I said, this is not the final destination. We will, as the gentleman asked before, we'll reevaluate as we go through, and if changes need to continue to happen, then we'll be back here making more changes. But we do feel we have a plan in place that is doable, that it's going to better serve students, and that we will end up with a good product at the end of all of this.
Are there other comments around the table or from the audience? Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Judy.
If there's no more audience comments. So, Dr. Nicholson, I was looking at PDE's gifted education frequently asked questions because, I'm still struggling with the idea that we give teachers a maximum caseload of 65 students, but we're saying that's really just for the paperwork. And I sent you the link to the page. Says the Pennsylvania Code limits the total number of gifted students to 65. Caseload and class size maximums, blah, blah, blah. Then it says the caseload is calculated using a full-time equivalency of 1:1. One teacher may be reported as the gifted teacher of record for a 0.6 full-time equivalency or 3/5 of an assignment teaching general education courses. And in that case, they can only have 26 classes. So they're really looking at, to me, it's what is the amount of time that's being assigned to the teacher to be working with students. And as the student who spoke tonight shared, gifted learners learn differently. And I think when we look at, there's a reason why they should be having an individualized education plan. And to say it's okay that we can actually give somebody 111 students when the law tells us it should be 65, and we're just going to have other people do the paperwork, to me just sounds like we're using a loophole. And we're essentially looking at the schedules that you've presented to us. We're asking one person to do almost 4 times the amount of work that our gifted teachers are currently doing at the middle level. When you're doubling the number of class sizes that they're doing, or number of periods that they're working, and increasing their caseloads going back and forth among the schools, I have serious concerns about the plan, and I think we should consider retaining the second gifted education teacher.
So I appreciate you sending me that link. Obviously, I'm on the presentation and can't take a look at it, but I will. I will say, currently what we're proposing is what's happening at the high school. It's my experience from other districts as well that the same thing has happened and is happening. And it's a situation that's been very successful. So I will take a look at the link. I am very visual and can't, you were reading, I was trying to visualize it, and there were too many numbers and letters in there. I just couldn't figure it out. So I'll take a look at it and we'll take it under advisement.
Okay, and I know anecdotally, I think that some people have found that the model at the high school is not meeting their students' needs.
And yeah, I was speaking specifically towards the caseload management, not necessarily the services being provided.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. I have concern about the 2 buildings too. I do. I brought that up initially when it was initially proposed. We keep coming back to the fact that east is one place and west is another place, and they're both not next to each other or close to each other. That's annoying, frankly. It's created a lot of problems, frankly, for all of us. But if you could go back to the slide about what the current day is like, and Mrs. Lofton, you had asked what this, because this represents the schedule for 2 individuals right now, 2 separate individuals. Right. And the rest of the time of that day for those 2 individuals, we don't point fingers usually, but they're blanks.
Right, well, and it does seem as though they're being underutilized in the way this has been presented to us.
But there's 2 buildings.
Right.
Well, no, not the way that it's being presented to us, the way that it is.
Okay, I'm just trying to be fair.
No, I'm trying to be fair too, but we're having a candid conversation, and
Right.
I think if things weren't changing and we didn't have 2 individuals retiring, I don't know that it could be as candid, in fairness to those individuals, because they work very hard, and there's no question that they've had impact on the students that they've served while they've been here. But now, this is literally just the way the days are for those 2 people.
Right, absolutely, and
So-
it appears that they're being underutilized.
Right.
Right.
And so I think where we have to have this really hard conversation as a school board and provide direction. And again, with the proximity being the barrier of the buildings, this is one person's job. So I don't know how to solve that. Because the proximity of the buildings is the barrier, not the schedule.
Well, I don't think the proximity is the barrier, because you go to one place one day and you're going to another place
But you're not there at the same place every single day.
Right.
So the barrier is that we have 2 simultaneously running buildings. with a section of services split 50-50 in terms of responsibility. Because if every gifted student was in one building, there'd be no issue. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why the proximity is the issue, as I see it.
The other thing I just want to add is we have other teachers that travel. It is the nature of the schedule sometimes, and it works for students and those staff. It may not be appealing to some, but we do have teachers that travel, music, ESL. There are other teachers that travel. It's not unusual for this to happen. It is not a full-time schedule in both buildings, in all honesty and to speak candidly. And to assume the fiscal responsibility that you empower me to assume, I cannot in good conscience offer 2 staff members for this work. It does not constitute the need for 2 full-time. Will it be logistically different? Yes, it will. We will support our staff and we will work through that. It does not warrant 2 individuals, and we will still work to meet the needs of our students.
I agree, it doesn't feel good. It feels bad. But just as though I would like to have a band and orchestra teacher in every elementary school, to me, I liken it in the same fashion. And I know in other districts, there is 1 elementary band teacher, and they go to 4 buildings, not just 2. There's 1 orchestra teacher in elementary, and it goes to 4 buildings, not just 2. So when it feels it feels not good, and I think that that's acknowledged, but I don't have a solution other than the fact that there's going to be there's travel time between the 2, and you can't be in 2 places at once, and
I would agree with Mrs. Lofton that what we envision is 3 days in one building, not traveling during the same day, and to be in both buildings for half a day each. 3 days of a cycle in one building, 3 days of the cycle in the other building. You know, what you could do as a district is progress monitor. Look at it for a semester and then evaluate it. And if you have to bring in somebody for the second semester because you really deem that's necessary and appropriate, then you have the prerogative to consider that. This is not, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're actually taking some ideas from other school districts and really attempting to enhance the opportunities for our gifted learners. I'm concerned about what you just said, Mrs. Lofton, about the high school. And maybe we need to unpack that more and talk more about that if there are things that are not happening in the ways that they should for our high school students. That raises questions for me that I think we should talk about. However, at the middle level, this will be a big step forward, in my experience, to serve these students much more effectively than they've experienced in the past.
Well, I'm in full support of the push-in model, and the schedule as presented on the next slide makes perfect sense. So it's just my question around whether or not we have one person doing this in each building every other day, or 2, 1 in each building. And so my other question is, part of my question about is there a specific certification that you have to have for gifted, is whether or not you could have a gifted teacher. Part of what I was trying to get at is, can you have the gifted teacher teaching gifted some periods and then also teaching something else? So we had bring in 2 teachers and they're not necessarily only serving in the gifted teacher role.
I believe that at Schwenksville, the gifted teacher there, at least in the past, was also serving ELA learners. ESL, sorry. So many letters. So I think that's happened in the past.
Right. So that's where I'm just wondering if there's another way to somehow work your magic with scheduling and assigning people and making sure that each building has their own gifted teacher while also being fiscally responsible.
So that, I mean, that's,
The fiscal responsibility, it's a real thing. It's just.
it was big this year, yes.
Yeah.
I think, though, that may be something we could debrief a little bit more about and think, we could brainstorm and consider possibilities. We have really attempted to maximize our resources this year, and principals will tell you. So I don't know that there's anybody who can support or straddle two different assignments, which is basically what you're suggesting. It has happened in the past. I just don't know that this year, in response to the retirements and some of the changing in assignments that we've made, that we have the capacity to do that. But we could look at that and see.
That's an interesting point brought up, and I guess my wondering would be, which would be the bigger burden? Straddling two assignments in one building, or traveling with one assignment between two buildings? Because if you are, say, an ELA teacher and you have that entire load of planning, and then you're also taking on gifted planning, but you're in one building, is that, to me, that wouldn't be a preference. I would rather do the one thing and travel between two buildings.
I think the other, I'm sorry, I think the other thing we would have to look at if we were doing that is the push-in would have to go away. The differentiation, the gifted, the clustering, the ability to differentiate and really extend within the class, within that tier 1 instruction would go away. It would be going back to a model like this, where that teacher would be teaching in ELA class or a math class or a science class, periods 1, 2, 3. And then you have lunch and prep, and you actually 1, 2, 3, I guess, or 1, 2, 8.
And only one prep for two preparations.
Right.
Based on the contract.
Is it doable? It's doable, but we believe this model is the way to go to serve students. And while that would, I guess, maybe serve and make the teacher schedule maybe easier, or they wouldn't at least be at East one day and West the other, it wouldn't serve students in the way that we're trying to design this to do so.
And Mrs. Lofton, I was upset about the attrition of the position. And then in digesting it, and I had communicated this to Dr. Russell, I almost feel as though the push-in model with this schedule layout is more of a coaching position than, it's not replacing what the current position is. The current position as it is it doesn't exist in this model. It's almost as though it's now an integration, targeted coaching responsibility with the push-in model, and then also the additional enrichment piece of it. But truly, gifted services should be integrated in every single class for this cohort of students, in my view. And so that's where the coaching piece of it and the mentality of changing the perception of gifted learners across all subjects. A kid's smart. Let's have them help so-and-so on their homework. That's the 90s model of giftedness, of gifted and talented. Do your homework like this person. They get A's. And so I think that changing the perception of what a gifted learner is an inroads to, it's culminating all of the conversations we've had around gifted to take a step forward to try to actually embed a shift in mentality in what giftedness is. And maybe that sounds pie in the sky, I don't know. But I just feel as though that's really the same way that we have devoted so much time, energy, effort towards finding pathways to differentiate and remediate for those that need extra. This is also extra, and it should be embedded in the way that delivery is given to those students, because they truly do think different. Everybody that has a gifted child knows that child thinks differently. And so It's not the same as working hard and getting straight A's. It's just not the same as that. And so to me, if you think of it as a coaching model, now we've got a coach, a gifted coach that's splitting time between two buildings and building up and giving resources. To me, I felt like I was able to wrap my head around it a little bit easier. It still doesn't feel good that we have to share one person between two buildings. But I also don't like that 6th grade split between the two buildings and 7th grade split between two buildings. I mean, and 8th grade split between two buildings. We could go, I don't like that we have to have two buildings, I guess, and that they're far away from each other.
You know, I think we had talked about this coaching idea and couching some of the ways that we describe the experiences as we envision them as coaching, as collaborative, as collegial, as really working together with individuals working together, one who is focused on providing gifted services, overseeing them, and one who is focused on the core content areas where we want to really strengthen the rigor and focus on improving these experiences for our gifted students and making them more challenging so that they're enriched in the ways that they should be as part of their academic experience as well. So I appreciate the idea of coaching or collaborating as a way to really describe what it is we're envisioning could be very powerful for the students.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that the existing schedule is underutilized. This schedule feels very tight still, like it's a lot. And so if this person is going to have a caseload of 65, if you have one GIEP meeting a day, that's 13 weeks of GIEP meetings. So like where, does that go in the day? I know as a parent participating in the meetings, like first thing or last thing are really usually the things that work best for the parent being able to participate. So are you missing the push-in? Are you missing advisory? That's sort of, that extra piece, I feel like is what makes this schedule look really tight for people long-term.
I think the acknowledgement of that, I mean, I won't speak as a teacher or an administrator in the district, but I think the acknowledgement of that is probably echoed by every teacher in the bargaining unit, that the day is really tight and that there's not enough time to do the paperwork or the things. So I think this illustrates it pretty nice, but you've got special ed I mean, if you guys could talk about that, about the caseload that needs to happen on the day-to-day.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, and looking at this, I think you look at the two slots in there where it says additional consultation that was placed in there, and that's, I think looking at it more of a coaching model, right? So will the push-in happen every day during first period when I'm at East? Probably not. Will it happen every day, second period when I'm at East? Maybe not, depending on when those meetings are. So it is more so of that coaching model. Remembering that this teacher is not necessarily planning, not necessarily assessing or grading students in that first or second period class. So they're in there, they're supporting, and maybe today they're supporting the first 20 minutes of that with that teacher, because that's when the teacher wants to do a station rotation and they can help with that piece of it. Or maybe they're in the last 30 minutes tomorrow. So there is more wiggle room in this than you would see in a traditional teacher schedule because of that. The co-planning won't necessarily take 47 minutes every day. There's wiggle room there. There are currently times when teachers miss advisory, gifted teachers would miss advisory for a GIP meeting. So that won't necessarily change. But there are also times when they miss their gifted seminar because the middle of the day during lunch is the best time for a parent. So there will definitely be give and take. This is a model. This isn't necessarily exactly what it will look like. And there will certainly be some flexibility to get that paperwork done and to make it work for them.
I think the reason why Middle School West is so far to the west is because 25 years ago, that was the cheapest land. That was the cheapest way to build another middle school, right? And so 25 years ago, or probably 30 years ago when the planning on that started, people said, we want to do this in the most fiscally responsible way that we can. And here we are decades later, struggling with the implications of that decision. And it's the same thing with our auditorium here.
Same thing with the high school renovations,
Same thing
100%.
with the with the auditorium.
Same thing with fixing the fleet and
Some
the
years
field.
ago, someone said, what is the least expensive way that I can do this?
Got it, Judy.
And I don't know that that's always the best way.
I agree.
And now we're going to be, we can't use our high school auditorium for our high school shows. And right now. And a huge investment needs to be made to make that usable and to fix it.
Which I think is why I think we went down a separate path, because it's a really big issue, right? And so I know that it's like you sort of joke, oh, they're far apart from each other and all of that, but you're absolutely right that this current board and the board of the last, I'd say, 5 years has really been working to fix and undo all of the fiscal responsibility that took place. But to me, I know that that's a buzzword. I think some of it comes down to working smarter, not harder, and using what we have in a good and solid way that's able to be justified, so we can also justify fixing. And unfortunately, it's like the incremental change is very, very stressful to me. I just feel like if we could just snap our fingers and just fix the things already. I've been saying it for. I just want to do the things. But this, I feel like with the gift, I know, poor Dr. Russell, but I couldn't say it anymore. But at this point, there needs to, like, even with Ms. Needham feels like that was 3 days ago. But it really was a long time ago. But even with the director of the TOSA for the arts and music, we have been waiting so long for payoff for that, for someone to pay attention to those needs for those students and that programming, and now we're here. I feel the same way about gifted services. Part of the reason I ran to be on the board was music and gifted. I mean, that's just facts. So
Only took 6 years.
It took a long time, but we're gonna see it happen. And I just feel like there has to be, I know that it's hard and uncomfortable, there has to be a little bit of a modicum of trust that we are going to make sure that it's done with fidelity, that it's done with the best intentions, and that there's accountability along the way. There has to be trust or change won't happen. And I just feel like this and the music and arts study thing, those are the two things that we can't keep. High school, we're about to have that meeting next week, right? What are we gonna do? We can't keep talking about how the auditorium doesn't work. We have to take a step forward and do it. So this is they're all in the same bucket to me of making some progress forward and also being flexible and realizing that it may need to change along the way to be improved.
Well, so to that point then, what metrics are we going to be looking at to say, you know what, we need to rethink how we're doing this?
Well, Dr. Russell mentioned, I think that was smart. The first semester, and there's some of it's anecdotal. We've been living a long time. I suffered through 3 years of middle school ELA with no differentiation. So there has to be.
I mean, one thing I will offer, if you want to consider progress monitoring this change at the middle level, is administer another survey. Have focus groups, because the feedback was very telling. Well, I'm not saying it for that reason, Ms. White, thank you. I'm saying it because that was the metric that we relied heavily upon to make this decision to propose the change. So follow up with parents and teachers and students and learn from them. How does this new structure serve you and meet your needs? Or to parents, okay, in the end, how is it serving your child? Give it a couple months and see. And then you always have the prerogative to consider something different for the second semester or next year.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. If, as I mentioned from the get-go, this is, the beginning of a process to strengthen the way we serve our students. So if we're looking at, let's say, a November survey, that we can get some information that gives a few months of this being implemented, gives us the ability to see what teachers feel, what students feel, what parents feel as far as how the students are being served and how this is working. And we can bring it back to this committee and talk it through, at the end of the 2026 calendar year for potential change in the second semester. If we're not meeting the needs, then we want to make sure we're meeting needs. That's the goal of this.
Could I offer too that we will also have a new superintendent in place at that time. So there's probably a necessary natural inflection at the end of the first semester to bring them into this conversation at that point in a material way. And then, I'd explicitly invite the members of the audience that came today to voice their concerns to attend that, presumably, Education Committee of the whole at that time, and provide your immediate feedback, because you're providing real qualitative feedback from your lived experience, and you're going to have a couple months of it in real practice, and you can bring receipts. So,
Mr. McGuire, to that point, you said it a little bit earlier as well. There's going to be a lot of change and it's coming at. It's like a tsunami amount of change, right? You got middle school schedule, we have a new superintendent, we have some of these different changes and initiatives, we have all of the STEM stuff. Everything's happening kind of at once, and it definitely does feel like when you go down the rabbit hole of all of these things need to happen. We talked about December being our reset because it is naturally the board reset. We do need to give time for these things to actually let the change happen, see where the pain points are, and then revisit and revise, if necessary. But I thank you all so much for all of the work that you did to lay it all out so clearly and succinctly. I know that we've received parent emails, especially on this topic. I've watched Dr. Nicholson answer, within hours, every single email that's come in. So if there are concerns in general, I think that this administration is truly looking to be communicative and really start everything off on just the best foot forward going into next year as we wind down this year. Does anyone have anything else to add before we let Dr. Nicholson go on with his slides? Is it going to be like Mr. Weaver, other? He has his last slide always says other.
No.
What's your last slide?
I have a whole other agenda item.
Stop, we're done. Okay, go ahead.
No, I appreciate the last bullet. I see the folks. I know it's getting late. Thank you for your feedback, and you know where to find me if you have further questions. So thank you for your feedback and input. And thank you to the board for the questions. Yeah, so I'll move into youth aid panel. This is going to be riveting, so you may not want to leave. But I will do my best to summarize this fairly quickly, these 4 or 5 slides. As I believe most of you are aware, so I'll just hit the bullet points and won't read the slide. Youth aid panel started in about the year 2000 at the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. It's a panel of locally trained volunteers that help youth take responsibility for their actions when they've committed something that would otherwise be considered a crime. It's a diversionary program, and it's really designed to help juvenile offenders avoid future contact with the juvenile justice system, avoid that arrest on their record. Youth Aid Panel has been running since January 2025 at Perkiomen Valley High School. And Montgomery County, during last school year, extended YAP to middle school and started rolling middle schools into the YAP program. We are proposing, or the proposal for YAP is that rather than contacting the police for certain infractions, which I'll spell out in just a minute, students will be referred to our own Youth Aid Panel program, just like we have at Perkiomen Valley High School. The students and family members agreed to YAP in lieu of police contact and some typical school disciplinary responses. And our own trained staff members, which has already taken place at the middle level, sit on that Youth Aid Panel. The student meets with the panel, they're given the opportunity to explain their circumstances, and this is their responsibility not to make excuses, but to take responsibility for their actions. This is not adjudicating whether they did something or not. This is, I did it, I'm sorry I did it, I shouldn't have done it, and the panel provides the student with a resolution. That might be education, it might be restitution, could be some sort of community service, and a timeline for that completion. Once that timeline ends, the student meets with them, goes back through those stipulations. If the student doesn't do what they're supposed to do, they're still referred to the local or the state police for whatever it is that they've done. So they have the opportunity to avoid that police contact. They have the opportunity to provide that restitution and that restorative justice piece. And if they don't meet that, it goes back to the typical way that we would handle a crime. Program has been approved by Montgomery County, as I said. Training has already been completed by Assistant District Attorney Angela Bell. She has been great. I've worked with her for probably 5 years now, and she is very, very supportive. She has given us, as she does with all school-based youth aid panels, the same level of mental health, substance abuse, and counseling services that would be available to the outside community youth assistance program or youth aid panel program. So what would be eligible and what would be discretionary? Just as the high school program, there are some that are automatic YAP referrals, and you can see them on the left. Again, I'm not going to read them. On the right are the discretionary, so for some second offenses and some other things, it becomes the choice of the school and the choice of the panel whether they're going to take that up or whether they say, you know what, clearly the first time through the youth aid panel didn't work for this student, they reoffend in the same way. We're not going to offer them youth aid panel, or maybe they've reoffended some other different way and we want to offer it again. The next steps here would be very simple. So we would look for approval in June at the board action meeting to begin middle school YAP for the start of the 26-27 school year. That would be in conjunction. We're hoping to have the all 3 level handbooks up for approval, and there would be some changes to the middle school handbook that would be in conjunction with this program. That would also hopefully be approved in June. We would monitor the program effectiveness throughout the 26-27 school year, and then we would update, if necessary, any of the guidelines that you saw on the previous page and get that reapproved moving into 27-28. So I'm willing to take questions. As I said, I've been working with ADA Bell for quite some time. I've seen phenomenal progress with youth aid panels and really low recidivism rates and all the things that it's been designed to do, it really has done at the schools I've been a part of. So I feel very strongly about this, and I'm very excited that we're at a spot where we're looking for approval here, as I believe very strongly in this program. But again, I'll take questions.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, if you're looking at the list of infractions as an example, how often do you see this sort of thing in the middle schools? Is this how do we see a lot of this?
I'm gonna phone a friend again and ask Mr. Creedon, principal at Middle School West, to kind of fill us all in on that.
Good question, because it's definitely less in the high school. I think what we would probably see in regards to this is, I mean, handful of times a year. I can say that since there was one incident that occurred in the middle of the year where we would have referred that to the youth aid panel, but our panel was going to be trained in about 2 weeks after that. So it was actually referred to another area youth aid panel. And then there was another incident that happened this year that was a vape incident, and the student denied the YAP panel. So he just received his suspension. So they do have that option. So those were just two cases, probably that would have qualified as significant since January.
Two questions. With the launch of Youth Aid Panel, 2000, that's accurate? So 25 years between launch and implementation?
2000 was the start at the county level.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm
yes,
saying.
Yes,
So there was
it
a
wasn't.
25-year gap
It
between?
wasn't until about 20. I'm trying to 2021, I believe, was the first school-based youth aid panel. So for the first 20 years or so, it was in the community only. It would be run out of a different building. Students that offended would be referred to the police. The police would refer to the county youth aid panel, and students would go to that. It was not school-based at all. It wasn't until about 2021 that ADA Bell, through a project she was working on and some grant money that she came into, launched it at the school level and started training school-based YAP teachers in buildings to actually be part of the YAP panel.
Cool. How does YAP interact with our school-based police force?
Good question. I have not had too many opportunities to interact with a school-based police force and YAP. However, when a situation such as this occurs, whether it be our own police, the state police, municipal police, we would handle this through YAP instead of processing it through any police department. So again, the first thing would be the student wants to take responsibility. When the student says, yes, I did one of those things, they would be referred to YAP, and our police may know about it, but they would not process anything. They wouldn't turn anything over to the state police. We would handle it in-house, or attempt to handle it in-house first, through that restorative piece prior to it going down that path. With administration, correct, with administration and the teacher panel.
Okay, so one of the implementation steps to this is training and coordination with the school police force.
So this this has been implemented in the
Right.
district.
The high school.
At the high school.
Correct.
So
Correct.
this would be the two
Expanding it.
additional
Correct,
middle
correct.
school police officer.
Correct.
Yeah, Chief Miller would work with, Officer Miller, or I'm sorry, Officer Early and Officer Nab to just make sure they're aware of the same process that's happening at the high school.
But correct me if I'm wrong, like the police officers would not actually be involved in these incidences. It would be Mr.
We are actually not part of the panels ourselves, because
But if there's an infraction, it comes to you.
infraction. Yes.
So the whole idea of the YAP is to avoid students entering into the criminal system and to keep the police out of it. The handbook stipulates what infractions would qualify for a student to have the option to come before a YAP panel. So we want to keep the police out in these cases. They are not involved.
They may be involved in a situation if there's a mutual combatant fight. They may be on scene for that when that happens, but it would be turned over to the principal and to the administration to work through the process before they were re-involved in the situation. So looking at the hour, if there are any other questions or comments, again, the next steps, we would like to move this forward to the June action for approval for next year in conjunction with those handbook changes.
Does anyone have issue with taking that step forward to expand the program, since we've seen such success with it? Right on. So that is coming in for June, and then the only other ask was Dr. Handerhands. Is that true? Excellent.
And that concludes my report.
Excellent. Sort of anticlimactic there at the end. All right. Very good. Closing items. Committee meeting notes will be available after the meeting. Notice a video disclaimer, and 3.03 is adjournment. That was a very robust and productive last Education Committee of the Whole for this school season. So thank you very, very much for everyone's work. Appreciate you. See you next week.